Determination regarding virtual meetings, and I will read this so that you know why nobody's in the chamber from the public. And it says, due to the increased threat of serious illness and loss of life by the rapid spread of the COVID-19 virus, the chair of the West Jordan City Council has determined that conducting this city council meeting at City Hall or at another anchor location is likely to contribute to the spread of COVID-19 and would present a substantial risk to the health, safety, and welfare of the city's residents, participants, and observers. Therefore, pursuant to Utah Code 52-4-207, Section 4, the West Jordan City Council hereby declares that the meetings of this public body will be held only electronically until further notice. This determination will expire in 30 days from the date the chair of the West Jordan City Council signs the written determination, which was signed on January 8th by Council Chair Chris McConaughey, who is with us tonight. So that is why nobody is here. And now we will proceed to the work session. And the work session begins with ranked choice voting, and Tanji is tuning in via Zoom. Let us make you, if you are not already, a panelist so that we can all, oh, you are a panelist. You're already on board. There you are. Awesome. Tanji, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Council Chair. I appreciate that. Let me get my ducks in a row here. Sorry about that. Can I get this to come up? Okay, so as you know, the city will host a municipal election this year. The city has the opportunity to choose to run ranked choice voting. I've watched ranked choice voting unfold over the last couple of years, and I'm excited for the opportunity to implement ranked choice voting if we choose to do so. Today, I'm going to go over the pros and cons of ranked choice voting in light of current circumstances. I thought I would do a timeline here. So before we dive into the meat of our discussion, I'd like to briefly review a few important dates leading up to the 2021 election. On March 17th, Salt Lake County Clerk's Office will issue a decision whether or not they will host ranked choice voting. April 15th, ranked choice voting declaration deadline for Salt Lake County and the entire state of Utah. So if we want to do ranked choice voting, we have to notify the Lieutenant Governor's office by April 15th.
Hey, Tanji, can I ask you a question?
You can.
So on March, so the county has not decided whether they will support ranked choice voting, that based on that March 17th decision point?
Yes.
Okay.
So on March 17th, the county, Sherry Swenson has a meeting with the county clerks and recorders, and she's supposed to announce whether she will be able to host the ranked choice voting election. All right, on June 1st through the 7th, candidate filing period for our regular election process. August 10th would be a primary election if we choose, if we do just the regular election. Also, I did leave one thing off on my timeline. August 10th through the 17th is the ranked choice voting candidate filing period. So if they're going to run for office, they have to do that by the 10th through the 17th.
Tanji, can you clarify that? So there's a different candidate filing period if we're doing ranked choice voting than if we are doing regular traditional voting methods that we've been using?
Yes, the candidate filing periods are different. So if we're going to do a traditional election, it would be June 1st through the 7th.
Right.
If we do ranked choice voting, the candidate filing period would be the 10th through the 17th of August.
Wow. Cool. Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. And then, of course, November 2nd would be the general election. All right, going on to our next slide there. While ranked choice voting was initially developed by an MIT professor in 1870, it still remains relatively new, a new voting format. The Utah legislature paved the way for ranked choice voting with the passage of House Bill 35, Municipal Alternative Voting Method Pilot Project in 2018. With broad support since that time, the program has successfully been piloted in Payson and Vineyard, Utah. Both cities report a positive experience with this election method. Sorry, my screen's frozen here. Proponents of ranked choice voting cite the potential absence of a primary election and lower campaign costs for candidates. Additionally, with ranked choice voting, candidates also compete for a second choice votes from their opponents' supporters, which lessens the incentive to run a negative campaign. There's evidence that in ranked choice voting contests, candidates do best when they reach out to positively as many voters as possible, including those supporting their opponents. Prior to the meeting, I reached out to each of you and asked your questions, what questions you had, what you wanted answered, and I wanted to walk through some of those questions and answers. Several of you were looking for examples of real-life ranked choice voting experiences. Ranked choice voting has been used by local government in 9 different states with both positive and negative feedback. I've had the opportunity to speak with the Utah County Clerk's Office, and overall, both Payson and Vineyard report positive experiences. The biggest challenge that they had was education to their citizens and staff to handle resident questions. I'd also like to highlight a city, Aspen, Colorado. Aspen, Colorado initially passed ranked choice voting, and after seeing it in action for a number of, they pulled from it after that first year because of the following concerns. The length of the time it took to receive the election results. The challenge of educating and fielding hundreds of questions from voters. It reduced the turnout among minority population and less experienced voters who cited confusion on how it all worked. An increase in the prevalence of spoiled ballots and called for adjudication. That seems to be one of the biggest things that in my research I found was spoiled ballots and adjudication. Like Aspen, Colorado, we could adopt ranked choice voting this year and we could turn around and go back to traditional voting if we didn't like it. It's something that every year, if we're going to participate in ranked choice voting, we have to send something to the Lieutenant Governor's office every year saying we're going to participate up until the year 2026 because it's still a pilot program. So after 2026, we wouldn't have to do it every year. So we could try it if things didn't work out, or we didn't like it for whatever reason, we could go back to a traditional election. What is the local perception surrounding ranked choice voting? Elected officials in Utah generally support ranked choice voting. Recently, we asked residents what they thought of ranked choice voting, and in an unscientific opt-in poll that we received, approximately 225 responses. 46% liked the idea of ranked choice voting. 28% were unfamiliar or wanted more information. And 26 didn't like the idea of moving to ranked choice voting. Many of the people that participated in the survey did leave comments. The comments were evenly split between they liked it and they didn't like it. It was a pretty even split. Another way that we've been gauging public comment on ranked choice voting is we've been monitoring stories from the news outlets. Statewide public comment on these types of stories have generally been more negative. Is my slide moving? Okay. Salt Lake County Clerk Sherry Swenson has committed to announcing whether the county will facilitate ranked choice voting in mid-March. We expect to hear some feedback from her. Some of her concerns regarding ranked choice voting at the county level include equipment preparation. They had some trouble getting their Dominion election equipment and contract signed. It didn't get signed until the 31st of December. So it's pushed back their delivery window. And Ms. Swenson doesn't believe that the traditional vote testing will occur before early fall and is unsure if ranked choice voting would be tested in time for the upcoming election. So there's a lot of uncertainty still there. And like I said before, we won't know anything until March when she announces how she wants to move forward. Another one of her concerns is the impact vote by mail and voter turnout. The county has referenced statistics from several other local entities that have processed ballots in ranked choice elections. In all cases, there was at least some correlation between ranked choice implementation and lower voter turnout. In addition, Ms. Swenson is concerned that the system will bring more in-person voters out and the county will see a decrease in mail-in ballots. Another one of her concerns that she talked about was one of her main things that she talked about was spoiled ballots. There's some evidence that ranked choice voting results in an additional adjudication, which requires additional staffing and would take longer. Of course, education, there's no question that ranked choice voting will require a fair amount of education. There will be additional costs. The cost associated with implementing the third-party software necessary to managing ranked choice voting. In addition, there may be additional printing and mailing fees associated with a potentially larger ballot. She's the ballot size. That may not have been included in the budget. So it's unclear who would bear the burden of that cost, or those costs, excuse me. Based on one-on-one conversations that I've had with Ms. Swenson, as well as public comment, I believe that it is strongly possible that ranked choice voting will not be managed by the county this year. If the county doesn't process ranked choice voting, we have the option to send our voting down to co-op based in Utah County. I've talked to Utah County, their office, and how they're thinking they're going to handle that is they're going to do a co-op. They're not sure if it's going to be Utah County employees that would be handling that, but they did tell me that they were going to put a co-op together to handle elections for Salt Lake County. And that was the last time I talked to them. It was probably a month and a half ago. So I don't know quite where they stand right now. There are concerns with contracting our elections to another county, including potential contracting requirements, availability of voting equipment, and the need to send ballots to another county for tabulation. In addition, there is currently a bill before the legislature that would adjust the current law to prevent municipalities from contracting with an outside company or entity to process ranked choice voting. As far as education, I just kind of wanted to go over what we would need for education. To scale a voter education campaign for our city, we would need to budget approximately $30,000. This is not an expense that the city typically incurs over voter education campaigns are traditionally handled through the county level. Voter education would need to be, we would need to staff up our community engagement department. This past year, we dropped staffing in the recorder's office and do not have the ability to backfill with other departments staffing during the summer months. As you have heard previously, there is funding for voter education through the Lieutenant Governor's office. I did speak to Justin Lee at the Lieutenant Governor's office because I had heard rumblings that the money that they had available, there could be some issues with that due to COVID. I talked to him, he assured me that there would be no issues with the money because of COVID. It is a first come, first serve, but when he tried to explain it to me, it was all the cities that are going to participate, they wait until that deadline in April 15th, and then they say, well, we have this much money. He wouldn't tell me how much money they had and how much each city would get, but he did tell me how that works with the funding through the Lieutenant Governor's office is they really don't give us the funds. They manage our education. So they would take care of, they would send us the mailers. They spend the money, get the mailers, put a campaign together, they send it to us, and then we would mail it out. So there would be a cost there as well for us to mail it out to our citizens. Both cities that I talked to said it was around $10,000. So Vineyard, when I talked to them, they said it was $10,000. As the city has to renew our division to participate in ranked choice voting annually, we would not be able to secure funding this year for future elections. So there was a question that I received from a council member asking, could we get the funds this year, and then wait a year and do education throughout, the next 2 years until our next election? And the answer to that is no, you have to apply for that every year. And that is it. Does anybody have any questions?
Let's open this up, just kind of workshop style. Anybody who wants to speak, go ahead and speak, whether it's questions, opinions, thoughts, ramblings, rants, I dare say so.
So Tangi, you said that they wouldn't give you money for the future, so you have to say you're doing it that calendar year to get any education funding.
Yeah. So
Okay.
a question was asked, a council member had asked, hey, can we tell them we don't want to do ranked choice voting this year, but can we get in on the money and educate our citizens over the next 2 years until our next election, which I thought was a really great idea. But the answer I got was no. You have to, every year we have to put in that we're going to do ranked choice voting until the pilot program is over. And if there is any money left year to year, we get it split up between whoever puts in to do ranked choice voting.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Tangi, this is Chad. I guess my question would be, who is giving you the information about ranked choice voting, and who's kind of pushing this, not just on our city, but on most of the cities? What's the background of why this is being pushed out?
Well, most of the information is coming from, why is his name slipping my mind? His name's slipping my mind.
Corey Holdaway.
Corey, thank you very much. Corey Holdaway is reaching out to the cities in Salt Lake County and in Utah County and pushing it. And that's where it's all stemming from. Miss Swenson, I should say. I'm not so sure she's ready for all this.
I agree.
It seems a little.
I don't think she's wanting to change it this year.
From what I understand, Salt Lake City is going to opt in. Draper is going to opt in. they have a unique situation because they're partly in Utah County, so they may be able to use Utah County that we couldn't, or may not be able to. And I heard Riverton was opting in. So there are 3 cities that have either looked at it or said they're going to do it. If you noticed, Kurt Bramble, I think it's Kurt, and it wasn't Kurt Bramble that was running the bill that in primary elections that have more than 2 candidates. So this is targeting obviously one election last summer, that it would be mandatory for the to do ranked choice voting so that we'd have a plurality of a vote for a candidate, and not have what we had last summer with the gubernatorial race with 30 whatever % of the vote winning the election. So
Yeah.
there are some, and obviously the positive is that you're right, Alan, it is Representative Winter, isn't it?
Yeah.
It was Mike Winter's bill.
This year, it's Mike Winter's bill. Yeah.
Yeah, but Bramble's like the support in the Senate or something. So you're right. Thanks,
Responsible.
Alan. The advantage is obviously you get somebody who wins a plurality of the vote. They get 50% of the vote, and not just a small minority of the vote.
In theory.
No, you would always have somebody who has the majority. Based on the way the counting works, you always have a majority winner.
Does anybody have any questions? Well, before
Yes.
I time in, go ahead, Chris. Sorry.
So my question, Tanji, is what happens if we say we'd like to go with ranked choice voting, and then we only have, let's say we have 6 people sign up to run for the 3 at large?
I have asked, the way I'll explain this to you, Councilmember McConaughey, I will just confuse you, even like if you're not confused, I will confuse you. So I've asked David Quayle and Tawny to join me. Can you promote them so they can give some feedback?
Yeah, I guess where I'm going with this is if we say we want to go ranked choice, but then we don't have enough to where it would really make a difference, does that mean we can, what sort of impact does that have on us?
Tawny, can you help me out here?
You should both be promoted to panelists now and able to speak.
Sorry about that. It took me a minute to turn on my video and unmute myself. So if we choose to go to ranked choice voting and then we have the 6, like Councilmember McConaughey said, we would just continue through with the same process. We wouldn't be able to go back and reverse it and run it like a regular election. It would go through that same ranked choice voting process because that's what we'll be set up to do at that point.
Okay, thank you.
But we are, I mean, not that, I don't know if this adds anything to your question, but we are able to adopt ranked choice voting. And if we don't like it, we are able to go back to a traditional format during our next elections. Also, one thing I'd like to point out, Vineyard and Payson. Vineyard has about 9,000 residents and Payson has 15,000 residents. Both, when I talked to Payson told me that they wish they had more time to educate their citizens, as Vineyard they felt like they had a good amount of time to educate their citizens. They didn't get as much feedback from citizens as Payson did. They took a lot more phone calls in Payson on education and how the voting would work.
So my biggest concern is the cost of education, and especially where we stand right now with budget and where we, going in from last year into this year is really that budgetary cost of what this would be. So for now, I think I would be against this simply because it's the education cost. Is Salt Lake County ready? I just don't think we're 100% there yet. That's my opinion. I don't want this to cost a fortune and then we turn around and say, oh, just kidding. Because I mean, the education cost is huge. And we need to make sure, I think we need to make sure that the county's ready and that we're committed to do it and go forward with it.
Yeah,
Well, education, I was gonna say the education costs would be offset by not having a primary election. Primary election runs 70K. And so we're not gonna, boy, if we spent 70K on education costs, I'm wondering what we're doing wrong. So I can't imagine us spending 70K on education. So even if we spent 35, 40K on education, we're still cost isn't the concern here. If in my mind, cost wouldn't be the issue on why we're going here. I think one, I'm going to tell you that I think I'd like to postpone the decision or the direction until we see what the legislature decides. If they require that you can't go outside the county, and then the county clerk says, no, I'm not going to do it, or I'm not ready, that doesn't do us a whole lot of, it doesn't matter what our decision is. I saw the comments on Facebook. There are a lot of positive comments about ranked choice voting. There are some negative comments about ranked choice voting. There are some people that, the question for me is that after we went through the last election in November, and there were questions of improprieties, I think the ultimate decision for me is which is the one that's going to give the residents of the city the most faith in the election. And you know, the proponents of ranked choice voting are going to say it's ranked choice voting. The opponents of ranked choice voting are going to say it's the old system. I've talked to a couple of people who are who are both opponents of ranked choice voting when they started and are now proponents of ranked choice because they've seen the advantages to it. But for me, it's going to come down to what's the system that the citizens of West Jordan are going to have the most faith in the election. And there's those two outstanding questions. If the county can't support it, then it doesn't matter. And if the legislature says you got to go with York County and you can't go to someplace else, then we don't have much choice either. So I don't know.
I almost said Councilmember Anderson. Council Director, Office Director Anderson. Alan has something to chime in with the finances as far as.
If
it's
you
gonna
remember
cost.
thank you, Council Chair Jacob. If you recall a couple meetings ago when we first talked in a work session about ranked choice voting, the financial implications right now under the current process is about $75,000 for the primary and $75,000 for the general election, or about $150,000 a year. Should the council choose to go with ranked choice voting, the primary election goes away. So in that sense, there's a savings of 75,000, but that would probably just need to be reallocated for education and outreach. So I don't know necessarily that there would be an increase in expenditures from what the city is already doing. It would be reallocating some of those funds for a primary election towards public outreach and communication, if that helps answer Councilmember Worthen's question.
Chair Jacob, I'd like to say one thing to that. When I did reach out to Utah County and talk to them about if they would handle our election for us, if we did go to ranked choice voting, their deputy told me that to keep our budget the same, not to minimize it by any means. They did, she was pretty, strong when she told me. She said, don't don't change your budget, keep it as it is. So I feel, I think it's all up in the air. I don't think we really can say, is it going to save us money? Is it, how do we know? When I went out looking for, the council had asked me to get real life, experiences. I went out and it was hard to find anything other than education. The only thing that I could find negative about it was education or spoiled ballots. It was not a broad range of different things. It was, I wish we could have, given our citizens more education. So as my concern as the election official, I am concerned about educating our citizens and, making sure they understand. I want them to come out and vote. I don't want to give them any reason not to come out and vote. So to me, education is important, but as far as, are we going to save money? I don't think we'll know until a couple cities go through this and we can see, what happens.
KNG Chair, this is Dave Quayle. If I could just add one thing, this upcoming election being the at-large seats is somewhat unique in under our code. It's the top 3 vote getters that win the election. So our election here won't be kind of quote unquote traditional in the regular sense. There are not 3 separate races that will be going on. So the true impact of ranked choice voting may not be seen the same way it would be seen in the district seats, where there will be more of a traditional primary under the current system. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you. Thank you, Dave. I'll just chime in really quickly and then we'll ask any questions before we proceed to the next item. And that is, I love the idea of ranked choice voting. I really, really love it for traditional one winner per seat, one winner per election voting, as in the case of, primaries that we have for governor or even city council races where there's one winner. I'm really hesitant or questionable. I don't know what the right word is. I really don't understand how it would work for a multi-seat winning election. So I haven't wrestled with that in my head as much. I'm not as clear on how it works. So my personal preference for this year for our city, which is what this kind of boils down to, is I would rather that we not do it this year, that we conduct our traditional primary if necessary and general election, and then look at doing ranked choice voting, possibly, depending on what the state tells us to do, if they do tell us to do something. But look at that for the district elections in 2 years from now. That's my 2 cents. Does anybody have any other questions or anything else you want to chime in on? Anything that you're not sure how it works? I did go through this year at the Republican state convention. We did this for the congressional seat and for the governor's race. So I'm happy to answer any questions having gone through it. Or, Tangi obviously is here to answer questions, and Tani as well. So does anybody have any questions? Anybody on the council have any questions about how it works or anything like that? Or should we go to the next item?
Just a comment, please, if I may, Chairman.
Thank you, Dave. Go ahead.
Great, thank you. And thank you, Tangi, for that great compilation of information. I was one of those council members that Tangi referenced in terms of wanting to see bona fide case study methodology of pros and cons. And I was vacillating one way or the other in preparation for this meeting and hoping that we would get different perspectives interjected here, which we have. And so I too agree, Council Member Jacob, with what's been said by various council members regarding the county perhaps not being on board and perhaps having to outsource the tabulation of the election, and with it being a little bit of an anomaly with a 3-seat election process, as you mentioned, the cost in our downturn economy. I can see the pros with it, and perhaps as a segue to the ADU discussion, I think that whether it's ranked choice voting, ADUs, if we don't take an action, well, then it perpetuates past issues. But if we do take action, it's going to have unintended consequences. And I guess we just need to choose the lesser of the negative potential consequences. I can see education being an issue. It was nice to hear both sides of the issue on the monetary impact that this would have. I really like the idea of being a detriment to negative campaigning, where candidates will tout their best virtues as opposed to undermining the negatives of others. So I would concur with what's basically been stated, that it's a great idea, but perhaps not the best time to proceed forward with it, would be my thought at this time. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councilmember Pack. Anybody else? Anybody else? Tangi, does that give you anything that you need as far as procedure goes? What is our next step here? Do we need to take a formal action on either opting in or opting out in like the next meeting or two?
No, we just use this as a discussion. If we were going to move forward, we'd have to send something to the Lieutenant Governor's office. But you can move forward if you guys just want to, take a vote amongst yourself and say we're not going to do it this year. That would probably be helpful, but we don't have to officially send it anywhere.
Right. Well, we don't have it agendized, or we don't do motions and formal votes in the workshop anyway. So
Right.
I would,
Sure.
go ahead, Councilmember McConaughey. I'm
We
getting
could
there.
ask if,
Can we take and say, what would you do? A vote, straw poll? We can still do that even we're not voting on anything.
Yeah, you can take a straw poll, but beyond that, no, you could take a straw poll.
Excellent point. Thank you. And thanks for the backup. Is there anybody on the council who would like to see this brought forth as an agenda business item to consider doing it this year? Would anybody like to see that brought forth on an agenda?
Council Chair Jacob, if I may suggest, if the county clerk isn't going to make a decision till the 17th, maybe that's something that should be discussed at a second meeting in March for possible action.
Yeah, I would say if there's a yes on here, then I think we should make it pending that. But if there's not a yes, then who cares what she says in March? Is there a yes among us? I'm not seeing a yes. So, all right, we'll plan on proceeding with the regular election cycle this year, and cross that bridge if we need to later.
And maybe talk about start to talk about education earlier. If we want to do it in the next election cycle, maybe talk about it a little earlier so we can educate our citizens. I'm happy to take care of that.
Yes.
You know what? I have one more question, and maybe this is, and maybe it's more for Tangi and David Quayle, and maybe you can just answer this in email or something, because you were talking about the 3-person race and the multi-purpose person race. I want to say, if the legislature or somebody decides that we have to go to ranked choice voting and it's not our choice, is the better option for those 3 at-large seats to have like an at-large A, an at-large B, and at-large C, where then you would have a discrete race that if you had more than if you had more than 2 file, then you would use the ranked choice voting would kick in. If you didn't, it's just a regular, and I'm wondering if that would make a difference to those issues about the 3 at large. So I don't expect an answer now, but it's just something that I know you looked at the election, and maybe maybe you can just send us an email, and if that kind of system works better with ranked choice voting, then that gives us plenty of opportunity to work on an ordinance for that, not this year, but for the next time that the at-large votes would come up based on that. So it's just a thought. So maybe if you can answer that question, like I said, in email or note back to us, that I think that'd be okay with me.
Councilmember Green, that is a good question. David Quayle and I actually have had a couple conversations about that same thing. So we'll put together some feedback and get it back to you guys.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Tanji, and thank you for the presentation and the discussion. I think that was good.
Thank you.
We have two heavy workshop items here. That was one. The next one is something that we just don't talk enough about. And that would be accessory dwelling units. I'll turn the time over to Mr. Anderson to lead us in this discussion to start off with.
All right, thank you, Council. So there's accessory dwelling units have been discussed by the City Council over the past 16 months or so. So I've got a little history here that I've put together. It was first brought to the council November 19th of 2019. Some of you were on the council at that time, others of you were not. The City Council tabled any action on that meeting because of the change in form of government, the new council to be elected. They had already been, I believe, 3 of you that were voted in at that election. There was an ordinance that was presented at that meeting as I look back in the records, and this original ordinance was only allowed in PC and PRD zones that were approved after November 1st, 2019. And there's a variety of different permitted uses, and I didn't mention that on here. It would have been a permitted use in those zones. So the council decided at that meeting to wait until the change in form of government, get the newly elected council members in place, and to bring it up at the first meeting of the Planning Commission and City Council. That was held on April 29th. It was one of our first meetings that was held electronically. If you recall at that meeting, Scott Langford with Community Development had put together a poll EV, and there was a series of questions that I'll go through a little bit later in the PowerPoint. Based on that input, there was apparent support from planning commissioners and the City Council that there should be some form of accessory dwelling units available in all residential zones in the city. So the staff continued to work on that. And on the August 18th, 2020 Planning Commission meeting, they held a public hearing. And from that hearing and the April 29th discussion of ADUs being conditional on all zones, the Planning Commission, with the recommendation of staff, recommended, both of those staff and the Planning Commission recommended to the City Council that further public outreach be conducted and suggested a deadline of February 2021 to revisit. So that's what we're going to be presenting tonight. Then on October 28th, just a few months ago during a work session, the staff reported, I've got to move my notes down here. The staff reported the results of a community survey regarding ADUs and presented possible methods for additional public outreach, which the council had asked be on social media. The primary survey had been done about a year prior, and that was through public outreach pre-COVID. And then as part of that, the council also tasked the land use subcommittee with involvement from the Planning Commission and the mayor's office to prepare questions to gather this additional feedback. At the December 16th, just a little more than a month ago, the land use subcommittee reported during the work session, and what was in the approved minutes is that the council requested a survey from 2019 be sent out through social media as quickly as possible, and then a reminder post around the first part of January. The survey was posted to the City Hall Facebook page on December 22nd, 2020, and also on January 12th, 2021. What I would like to do first, now that you've got kind of a history of how this has progressed, I want to go through some of the survey results rather quickly. You've had them in your packet, but just to kind of summarize these topics. So the first question, now this is the prior survey. So this was a year ago. This was not the one on social media. First question was, would you support the opportunity to rent out an ADU from your home? And there were 632 respondents to this survey, and approximately 75% of them were in support of renting out an accessory dwelling unit from their home. And obviously 25% said no. The next question is, would you support accessory dwelling units as attached, detached, or both? And you've seen in some of those graphics that I had earlier in the slides that a detached is a separate building, attached is either interior to the home or attached to the home. Attached was 34% of support, 585 respondents. Detached was the smallest at 4%. And allowing both attached and detached was 61%. Next question, should ADUs be required to have off-street parking? The majority of the residents, 628 respondents, indicated that yes, they should have off-street, meaning that there be parking locations on the property so that they're not parking out on the street. We have related to that ordinances, for snowplows and things like that. The last question on this survey was, should the owner of the property live on site? And out of 628 responses to this question, 60% indicated yes, the owner should, and 40% indicated no, they should not. So what I gleaned from this, just real quick, is that there is resident support for accessory dwelling units. The resident supports both attached and detached. Attached is higher than detached, but they do support both. There is resident support for off-street parking for ADUs and resident support that owners live on site. So that's the prior survey. The social media survey, as I mentioned earlier, the first one was posted December 22nd, 2020. We received 12 responses likely related to the holiday season. And the second one was posted on January 12th, 2021 with 168 responses. So there were 3 questions in this survey. The first one was, do you want an accessory dwelling unit allowed in your neighborhood? Again, the majority voted yes, and there's 166 respondents on this one. There were some that were scored as maybe and unsure. If you combine those two together, you're still about 75%, and 24% said no. So that was pretty consistent. The second question, and this shows Q3 as a question 3.
Don't think our slides are,
Oh, I need to.
there we go.
I need to advance. I have my notes and thank you. Okay, there's the question 1 from the social media survey. And then based on the graphic, which is that home, the graphic I had earlier in the slides, and I'll have that back up here in a minute, but based on that graphic, what would be supported? Attached, internal, detached, or both? And in this instance, as well as the previous survey, the majority of support was both, with a very high result for attached. And then the third question is, should the owner be required to occupy the home that has an accessory dwelling unit? Again, the majority of the respondents here, 56% said yes. So from the social media survey, there is still resident support for the ADUs, similar to, I got to stay up on this. Resident support for both attached and detached, and there is resident support that the owner live on site of an ADU. So just to refresh your memory from the April 29th meeting, there was, these were some of the questions that were done between the Planning Commission and the City Council. So in which zones should ADU be allowed? And 60%, 9 of the 2 groups, all zones that permit single family homes. Should ADUs be limited to one accessory living quarter, ALQ, per principal dwelling unit. That's our current code is ALQ. And 79% or 11 of you said yes, it should be limited to 1. Should ADUs be limited to lots that are 40,000 square feet or larger? That's basically a 1 acre lot. And 12 of you indicated no, that's 92%. Should ADUs approval be contingent upon adjoining property owners' consent? 80% of you said no. Should ADUs only be permitted in conjunction with new development or part of an approved master plan such as PC and PRD zones? That was what was originally presented to you back in November of 2019. 100% of you said no. Should all properties with an ADU record a deed restriction on the property indicating the restricted uses and conditions of the ADU? Yes, which is our current ALQ code, is 93% or 13 of you. Should the owner of the property be required to live on site, either in the principal dwelling or accessory dwelling? And the majority of you is really close, 8-6, but the majority said no, which is different than what the residents had indicated on their survey. A few other questions that came out of that meeting back on April 29th. Should home occupations be permitted in ADUs? 71% said yes. How many required off-street paved parking spaces should be required per ADU? And the majority, slight majority, said that it should be based on the number of bedrooms. So if it's 1 and 2 bedroom ADUs, there should be 1 additional parking space on the property. If it was 3+ bedrooms, there should be 2 additional parking spaces on the property. Should all required ADU parking spaces be located outside the required front yard and corner side yard? The majority of you, 54%, said it didn't matter. Should off-street parking requirements be reduced or waived if the accessory dwelling unit is within a 1/4 mile of the track station? 54% of you said no, just over half. And the last one is ADU should not be temporary in nature and should be placed on a permanent foundation. And 75% of you said yes, it should be on a permanent foundation. So then from that group, so now you've got 3 surveys: the prior survey, the social media survey, and the Planning Commission City Council survey. There was similar support for all single family zones between the 3. There was support for 1 ADU per parcel. Not limited to lot side. The November 2019, the PCPRD and the current ALQ is 40,000 square foot lots, which are 1 acre lots. The difference that I mentioned is the residents support that owners live on site. The Planning Commission City Council was mixed on that. Didn't feel like the owner needed to live on site. Unified support for off-street parking and unified support for permanent for the ADU being on a permanent foundation. So based upon what you had as a council mentioned at the December 16th, 2020 meeting, the desire of the council was to conduct the survey and come up with some direction for the administration to come up with a potential ADU policy. The hope of the council that was mentioned at that meeting was to prepare something during the legislative session with the bills that are currently up on the Hill that are discussing ADUs and what the state may require of municipalities on ADUs. So what we are looking for the council, you now have all the information that you've requested, is right now the draft ordinance that was in your packet from the August 2020 Planning Commission is allowed in all zones, and that would probably be what I would think is a foundation. And then based on these survey results, give some guidance to staff of what you would like to see bring back. Still needs to go to the Planning Commission since they haven't approved a land use. And then it would come to the City Council. There's 2 10-day public notices that would need to happen, one for the Planning Commission and one for the City Council. So I would anticipate the earliest that this could come back to you would probably be March 10th, maybe March 24th.
Thank you.
And that's what I have, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. So I'm gonna get this whole last name thing down before the night's over. Something I want to just say as we go into the discussion on this is that there is a proposed ordinance in the packet. I hope everybody's had a chance to look at it. It's not very long, so look at it now if you haven't. And what I would hope comes out of this discussion is some clear direction to the staff as far as what to draft in a quote unquote final proposed ordinance, so that next time we see this, we can vote it up or vote it down and move on. Another prefatory comment. I don't even know if that's a word. I would like to also pretend that the state's not doing anything, because the bottom line is we don't know what they're going to do. They may force this on us, they may not. Stuff may pass, stuff may not. And for the purposes of right now, let's proceed as if the state's not doing anything. And let's say what we would like in our city and provide direction for our city. And then if the state decides to force things on it, well, we'll catch that football when it's thrown or kicked, as far as that goes. I'm going to promote Duncan and Scott, or Alan, would you promote Duncan and Scott to panelists? Just so that they can answer questions if any questions are headed towards legal or the planning department. And so we'll open it up. Anybody want to talk about ADUs?
I'll jump in. I'm trying to make sure I go in the right direction here. While I agree with kind of in principle with what you said here a second ago, Chair Jacob, about let's do what West Jordan wants to do. That may have been better if we were going to try to preempt the legislature. By the time this comes back to us, legislative session is going to be over. March 10th, March 24th, legislative session is going to be over.
Well, I agree. And I didn't mean that I wanted to preempt the legislature. Just, the best time to plant a tree is 10 years ago. The second best time is now.
Right.
So.
What I'm saying is, by the time we consider this, legislature is going to have met and made the decision on a couple of their ADU bills or not. And so there's a couple of things. So that will be better for us, I think, if we wait till 10th of March, 24th of March to hear this one more time, just because then we'll know what the legislature did. What I don't want to do is do something and then have the legislature do something and then we have to re-amend this within just a few weeks. So, so for scheduling, I'd say we ought to just make sure that the legislature's done by the time we hear this. A couple of my thoughts on this in particular, and it's hard to separate my thoughts because I know what the one legislative bill is. And that's partly why I'd like to wait to see with the final, to see what happens in the legislature, because there's some specific language in the bill before the legislature that is not going to allow us to restrict parking at all or put any parking requirements on there. There is one thing that they are doing in the bill as well, that the ordinance that we have written says that no more than 3 people can live in the dwelling unit, and the bill's going to say 4 if it passes. So those couple, there are some minor details that we need to work out. And so my thought is that I'm going to make a slight assumption here and just assume, although there's a lot of pressure from some lobby groups that this is to get rid of the bill, but what I'm torn. But here's my overall thought on ADUs. I know we've got some emails and some comments from some people who think that we are not listening to the residents because there's lots of residents that are against ADUs and that we're not listening to the residents. And I think that the surveys actually show. Now, the one thing that same person said is that the questions may be biased, and there may be some biased questions there, and I'm not gonna deal with that. But it appears that people are okay with ADUs in their neighborhoods and I'm okay with ADUs in principle in all zones, just because I think there's lots of people that are already doing ADUs to supplement income, keep people in homes. There's lots of things that there are reasons why ADUs are beneficial. I think that there are, and I think this is a different issue, but I think enforcement of ADUs or improperly subdivided homes where a single family home is now 2 rental units and those kind of things, that's a separate unit or a separate issue. People can call, since we don't have a real restriction on unrelated people, you can have roommates. Interesting that you can have a lot of people share a kitchen, but if you have a separate kitchen, then somehow that is inherently wrong. So people have roommates, people share homes, people rent out bedrooms. I don't think this is any different. And fundamentally, it gets back to somebody can deal with the right to deal with their own property. Understanding that it does kind of change the character of a single family neighborhood, let me rephrase that, the single family residential zoning, where it's 1 house per lot. So I think it's a change, but things change over time. And so I don't know. The one thing that I would like to do in specific in this bill or in this legislation is I think I would like to separate out, this is some specific feedback for staff. I think I would like to separate out internal ADUs versus external ADUs. And on internal ADUs, I think that I'm okay with that being in any zone. I think on a external ADU, and I think this would also deal with parking in case the legislature deals with the way they are. I think that we restrict external ADUs to R110 or greater, or I don't know if we can do this based on lot size.
Well, the proposed ordinance does enforce setbacks and things for an external ADU. So the smaller the lot, the harder time you're gonna have to squeeze one on there.
I'm thinking of the byproducts of if you were to put an external. Now, on my lot, I live in an R18 neighborhood, but my lot's 0.26. I could put an ADU out in the backyard and nobody'd ever notice it. The rest, and there are 3 lots in the neighborhood that could, but the rest of the lots in the neighborhood couldn't because, and I think that I'm leaning towards leaving external ADUs out of R18 just because of the potential parking issues, because R18s and smaller have smaller lots. Now, I'm not sure how I want to deal with that in a PC zone. So if anybody's got a great idea, because PC zones can go anywhere between a massive 1 acre lot like with Jones Ranch to small lots. And I don't know how we deal with that in the ordinance, but generally I think I would I would lean to external ADUs being in R110 or greater. I think that would help eliminate some parking issues in the R18 for the external. For the internal, I think we probably got to allow them just because people have roommates. So those are my thoughts.
Is there a reason an external ADU would require more or less parking than an internal ADU?
Maybe not.
Just throwing that out there.
Maybe.
Your mic's off, but that's okay.
You may be making a valid point. It just,
I get what you're saying.
I'm just
see where you're
thinking,
going
I'm
with
just
it.
thinking if you've got an R18 with the next, it takes up lot space.
Chew on it for a minute.
It would take up lot space that people would be parking
Right.
cars
Oh, I
or
see.
RVs.
I see. You may have room for the parking place or the building, but maybe not both.
Yes.
Gotcha.
I think that's more of the thought is that not sure that you could get both the parking or, a lot of people park their RVs or something in the house, but if they had to do that,
Gotcha.
could they do both? I don't know. That's something to look at.
Gotcha. Okay. I'm kind of not calling on people workshop wise, but Councilmember Lamb, your light's on. Councilmember Lamb, your light's not on anymore. Does anybody
So I do,
Thanks, Kaylee, or Councilmember Whitelock. See, I'm getting there.
and I don't care if you call me Kayleen, it's fine. A few things. This is what I've heard from not only the survey, reading all the responses, following people on social media and speaking to people, but these are the things that I feel are important from that. And I should say on the side, I probably, if I just had to vote straight up or down what Kayleen wanted, I'd probably vote against them. But so this is what I've heard. So this is what I want to see. I want us to work in this policy to maintain the feel and integrity of the current neighborhoods. I don't think it's fair to people that bought their home 10, 20, 30, 50, 60 years ago to have everything change in their existing neighborhood. I think for safety, if it's going to be an internal ADU, there should be a separate entrance required, and that our police and fire need to know about it so that in the case of a fire or an emergency, they can respond quickly. I actually think we need 2 parking spots required because if there's more than 1 bedroom, because it's a rare occasion that someone lives on their own, even in a ADU, if there's more than 1 bedroom. And in our state right now, people drive. They have to. To get anywhere, you have to drive. And that requires parking spaces. And the biggest complaint that people have with the illegal ADUs that are going on currently, and what the survey indicated, is parking. So I think that's really important. And I think 2 is a good amount. I think, and Kelvin was getting here with his external ADU versus internal, but I just think we have to ensure that there is sufficient land, because I could live on an R18 but have an F-size home. That doesn't leave a lot of land left around my home. So and I don't know how you write that, but I think that's something that we need to be cognizant of and consider. The other is, I very strongly, as well as the residents, feel that if we're doing this, one of the units needs to be owner occupied. I understand. My daughter has a friend, her mom goes, it's typically always to Haiti with her church group to help. And so she might be gone for a while. So maybe we have a temporary time that the owner could be gone, and that maybe they could have a blood relative living there instead or something. But to me, I feel like if we don't require one of the units to be lived in by the owner, and I don't care if it's the bigger or the smaller, but if we don't do that, all we're doing is turning it into a apartment complex in a single family neighborhood. So to me, those are really important as we look at this. And I hope that we can work on it to get there. As far as some of the other things, I don't know. I don't really know how, if you didn't, I think it's number 12 on here, talks about the home businesses. How do you monitor that? I mean, I really dislike when we have things in code that we have no intention of enforcing, or we don't have any intention of supporting the staff so that they can occur. So I don't want to see stuff in this code that we're just not going to enforce, because I think that just causes additional issues. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Is anybody else wanting to chime in? Councilmember Pack, and notice your mic turned on.
Yes, thanks very much, Chairman. Great discussion. That's why I love when we can approach conversations like these from divergent points of view with different perspectives, because, and quite often I just like bringing up devil's advocate points of view, not necessarily trying to argue for one way or the other. So I appreciate what's been said already. So I've made some notes. Maybe I can take them one by one, and it might spark a little bit of conversation and thought. I can understand the stigma of rentals. I've had rental properties in the past, and I wonder if we say that someone who's renting a home cannot have a home-based business, and we won't license that, if that opens us up to some liability of profiling renters not being able to have a home-based business. I agree with Councilmember Green and Councilmember Whitelock on setbacks for accessory dwelling units that are detached, because if we don't, I guess the Board of Adjustment would be really busy. And but we need that for safety. I can see that there's got to be an intersection of safety and respecting property owners' rights, while also recognizing that property owners' rights can infringe on adjacent property owners' rights. I also agree there's a difference between accessory in terms of the nuance of the word, meaning it's ancillary to the primary dwelling. It's not attached. If it's attached, let's say that it's a rambler and it's just an upstairs and downstairs that someone might already be renting, but now they can't rent it because we have an ADU ordinance. I can appreciate, as has been mentioned in our joint city council and planning commission meetings, that there should be a separate entrance, as Councilmember Whitelock mentioned, because let's say it's walled off and you can't get from the upstairs to the downstairs because it might be rented out to two separate families. Well, yes, you do need to, now do you have two addresses? And what about for fire accessibility? It just seems like, as I mentioned with our previous discussion on ranked choice voting, that no matter what we do, we're probably going to solve some issues by creating other issues. So it just depends on what issues we want to deal with. If we don't do anything, we won't have affordable housing. I couldn't afford to move into my home right now. And if we want our children to be able to afford to move into homes around us, or other starter families wanting to move into West Jordan so we can be the home of the good neighbor, you know, it becomes very egregious trying to qualify for a home loan. And we're trying to establish affordable housing. How else do we do it? Do we want to have high-rise, high density, or would this be better? So yes, it would mean more on-street parking, which, in conversation with Mayor Burton, as I was dealing with a recent request from a resident regarding some speed bumps and traffic calming measures, it was interesting to note that perhaps on-street parking in certain circumstances can actually diminish rates of speed that vehicles travel because they're on the lookout for potential danger. But you know, that might be an ancillary conversation. But to me, there is a difference if it's a true accessory that's not attached versus just renting out a basement. And it might be hard to limit property owners' rights of having a rental that they don't live in. Current CCRs and some HOAs might preclude that. So of course we'd have to legislate to allow ADUs. And Councilmember Green mentioned the survey questions. I can see how, you know, sometimes if you're taking a test at school, some of the questions can be leading. And so that email that he referenced from one of our prolific civically engaged residents, I see the line of thinking there, and I want to reference how that can skew data as well. So I'm grateful for the conversation. I want to acknowledge the impact that this could make on adjacent residents, while also recognizing property owners' rights and seeing our main goal here, if I'm not mistaken, is to provide affordable housing for the community that's basically mandated by the county and that we want to have for the city. And so what way would be the best way to do that? Do we want a lot of apartment homes, or do we want to allow accessory dwelling units? And I think the lesser negative impact, because again, when you're trying to solve one problem, you're going to create something else at its expense, would be to allow accessory dwelling units. So I'd be a proponent of them. Of course, as I mentioned, there are certain ramifications and instances where that might not be the most prudent in terms of setback. But I do acknowledge how that can negatively impact a neighborhood if all of a sudden you have rentals. But similar to how Ms. Sloan had the great presentation on ranked choice voting, I wonder if we could get a little bit more detail on adjacent cities. I mean, I know we've got Seattle, we've got Portland, we've got Minneapolis, but something closer. And I have researched some of that. I've talked to people in other cities that allow that, to see their pros and cons. And the on-street parking seems to be the most prolific concern. It's not that the neighborhoods going downhill, the yards aren't maintained. It's just there are more vehicles, which I guess you can make an argument if that's good or bad, or if it is bad, is it worse than not having affordable housing options? Because I know a lot of our residents that have reached out to me as well, because their property taxes are higher, not necessarily due to property tax increases, but due to equity in the home, and now they're having to pay more. They don't want to be priced out of their home. And so a way to not be priced out of their home is to have a rental on site where they can still watch over their property as well. So there's all these situations, and I want to make sure that we're getting the feedback requisite from different demographics of residents so that we don't discount a certain demographic of what they need or don't need. So I know we've talked about this for a long time, and I apologize for the lengthy monologue. I'm just trying to get a lot of information out there to make sure that we're covering all our bases and not having any blind spots in this conversation of what we are going to allow and won't allow. So thank you for your time.
I appreciate your comments. Thanks, Dan. Councilmember McConaughey,
Thank you.
quickly.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I recognize that you're looking at the clock and we're running short on time. So going to the proposed ordinance that's in the packet, and speaking directly to that, since that's kind of the basis for what we've got in front of us, I'm okay with most of what's in A. I don't have too many concerns there. Location and type, I would actually strip most of this out. I don't see a need to have different building requirements if it's going to be used as an ADU versus if it's going to be used as a shop or an outbuilding. I also think this causes problems with conversion. Somebody can build a shop or a garage, a detached garage that doesn't necessarily match the construction of the house, the primary residence. But if they want to use it as an ADU or convert it to an ADU, now we require the construction to match the house. That seems a little bit weird. I would rather not have two separate building requirements in two separate places, or two separate sets of setbacks in multiple places. I am, however, okay with the parking requirements, making sure that we have parking. I like that this is a conditional use, so it can be reviewed property by property and make sure it's appropriate, make sure it fits. I just want to be careful that we're not making decisions based on things that we shouldn't. Other things that I see in here, I don't know that they should be required to have a rental license and comply with the good landlord program if it's somebody who's in your family, like an extended relative, maybe a mother-in-law who's living with you, who's living out in that ADU. I don't know that I'd want them to have to pay for the good landlord for something like that. Most of this I think is okay. I want to take sort of a minimalist approach to regulation. People's property. If they're doing something that's impacting their neighbors, there should be other things that we already have on the books that we can enforce to take care of that. So I think this could use
A
the
delete
liberal
key?
use of the delete button in a review. With
And-
that, I know we're very tight on time, so I'll cede the floor.
Can
Thank
the
Quick.
one thing is, I do agree with Councilmember McConaughey, is that the rental licenses and some of those kind of things, if it's an owner occupied, where do you draw the line between owner occupied renting out a room with a roommate versus an ADU? And if it's owner occupied, you think that they're going to rent to the people that aren't going to drive them crazy. So I agree with you, is that we need to look at the liberal use of the delete key here and make it without all, like what you talked about with the different building sizes and all that, those kind of things. And I think I agree with, for the most part, about home occupation, and is, look, we're considering it a dwelling unit, the home occupation can be there, and I don't want to restrict it any more than what we need to. So I like the direction that you're talking about, Councilmember McConaughey, is, and you know, at the end of the day, we get this and we have all the delete, we do most of the delete stuff that you're talking about. If parking becomes an issue because the legislature is dictating that, that's just a bigger liberal use of the delete key. So I like the direction that you're talking about going. Thank you.
Okay, so if it's okay with the council, I don't know if staff has gotten enough specific direction to come back with a proposed ordinance for a business item at this point. Scott, give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. They have to go to planning commission first, I understand.
I think we have enough. We will do our very best. I appreciate the comments, and if it's the council's desire, we can move it forward to the commission.
Okay, that's what I would like to see happen. Feel free to reach out to myself or Kelvin as council leadership, or the land use committee for, quick feedback if you need it as you prepare that. But we'll leave it in your hands then until we hear otherwise.
And I'll be happy to support Scott in that effort. I think this is excellent feedback.
I appreciate that. Thanks, Duncan. All right, let's move on to the final work session item very, very quickly. New business. This is what we have coming up on new business. Read it. I am trying to make this more public, more available for council members so that everybody can see this kind of whenever they want. And that's on the agenda tracker spreadsheet that the council's office and council leadership works on. You all should be able to access that at any time. If you need help with that, talk to IT. Or Alan can walk you through that as well. So we have a declaration of intent to amend the service boundary for the Kearns Improvement District. This is related to the Wood Ranch. Make sure I get the right ranch. Wood Ranch development. We have ordinance 2104, amending the form of government. This is a list of code changes coming up that Corbin has found. Excuse me. That Corbin has found in going through the code, just things that we either missed or didn't realize would be an issue when we change the form of government. So there's a list of those. Watch for that coming soon. And Councilmember Whitelock has forwarded everybody an email about the Western Growth Coalition resolution on transportation that we'll formally be able to consider in our next meeting. We just wanted to put that on here so you could see that. And with that, we have about 6 minutes where we can take a brief recess, and the meeting will reconvene at 7 p.m. On your screen is how to join us. Citizen comment comes up relatively quick. So if you'd like to join us and speak to us, there are your directions on the screen. Hopefully you can see those. So we will reconvene at 7 p.m. Thank you. I've always wanted to tap out a beat with that thing. Okay, I'll call the council meeting back to order. It is 7 p.m. This is the West Jordan City Council meeting for January 27th. This is the official formal meeting, I guess is what you call that. And I will first read our determination regarding virtual meetings so that you know why we're having a virtual meeting. And it says, due to the increased threat of serious illness and loss of life by the rapid spread of the COVID-19 virus, the chair of the West Jordan City Council has determined that conducting this city council meeting at City Hall or at another anchor location is likely to contribute to the spread of COVID-19 and would present a substantial risk to the health, safety, and welfare of the city's residents, participants, and observers. Therefore, pursuant to Utah Code 52-4-207, Section 4, the West Jordan City Council hereby declares that the meetings of this public body will be held only electronically until further notice. This determination will expire 30 days from the date that the chair of the West Jordan City Council signs the written determination, which was signed on January 8th by Council Chair McConaughey at the time, and will expire on February 8th, and we'll discuss that later, possibly. We will proceed to a pledge of allegiance, and this would be led virtually by our communications director, or what's your title, Tawny? Tawny Barker, Director of Community Engagement and Government Affairs and Communications and lots of other stuff that she does.
A mouthful. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with justice for all.
Thank you, Tawny. I think it was in there. Our next item on the agenda is citizen comments. And as there are no citizens in the chamber because of the declaration which was previously read, your opportunity to comment is virtual. However, your comments can be as genuine and real as any comments ever are. I don't mean to say that your comments are not, never mind. So it's your only opportunity to address the city council during this meeting, as we have no public hearings on the schedule tonight. So this is it. You may speak on any topic that the city council talks about, and that may be something on tonight's agenda or not. You have up to 3 minutes unless you are representing a group, in which case state that up front and we'll up your time to 5 minutes. If you are the spokesman for the group, not speaking with the group. The council does not typically respond to questions or engage in debates or dialogue from the dais, but we will take your contact information. If there is something that we need to get back to you on, we can have our staff or a council member get back to you if necessary after the meeting or at some other time. We request, and we had a whole language thing that I don't have in front of me. We request that you help maintain the decorum of the meeting by refraining from personal attacks, bad language, unprofessional stuff. If you were here in the chamber, I'd say applause or booing. We don't like that either. And we ask you that you give us your name so we know who we're talking to. And with that, let's see, there's the next slide that has the picture of the screen and stuff. Yeah, so as you are logged into the Zoom, remind me how we do this. We hit the raise hand button. You will be an attendee. Raise your hand, and that will let us know to promote or to allow you to speak. And then we can allow you to speak. If you are joined, yeah, you'll see this. The host would like you to unmute your microphone, and there's a blue button there that says unmute now. And then you'll be allowed to speak when it's your turn, and we'll call on you for that. If you are joining by phone, the next slide, nope. Okay, gotcha. If you're joining by phone and you are on the line by phone, press *9 if you would like to be called on. That effectively raises your virtual hand, so to speak. And then when it is your turn, we'll call on you and you will press *6 on your telephone to unmute your microphone, so to speak. And I will give this a few minutes. We'll go ahead and open the citizen comment period. I am seeing no attendees raising their hand currently. Again, if you'd like to raise your hand, if you'd like to speak, hit the raise hand button. at the bottom of your screen. If you would not like to speak. Councilmember Anderson, is there anybody online who would like to speak?
I don't know about online, but we did receive two phone calls today of two individuals that indicated they would be interested to speak. The first one that called was a Mr. Gary Warner. I don't see him in the attendee page, but he had called. And the second individual who called is Miss Alexandra Efremo. And I do see that she has called with the phone number that ends in 8873. But those are the two that had called the council office earlier today, seeking time to speak before the council. There may be others that are on the list that have not called.
Right. And just to be clear, you do not need to call in advance. You're welcome to call the council office if you need instructions or help on how to participate. Again, if you are on the phone and you would like to speak, press *9 and we'll give you a few seconds to register your intent. But I'm not seeing anybody else on the Zoom. Okay, well, seeing none raising their hand at this point, I will close citizen comments and we'll proceed to the next item on the agenda. And that is the City Council Office Report. That would be Mr. Anderson.
Thank you. Council, I don't really have much to report other than just a couple quick notes. Number one is we do have an organization here, GenCom, who is assisting us with the new technology upgrade that has occurred in the council office due to the COVID pandemic. That includes some technology that was funded through the CARES Act specifically for this purpose, to have the transparency and be able to have the dialogue remote, where citizens can actually comment from home if they choose to. And so we're finalizing that, and the council office and others are appreciative that the four of you are here this evening and the three are participating remotely as we test the functionality of the system. So that's the first thing. And related to that, we still continue to stream to YouTube live. So individuals and residents that choose to just participate and by viewing the proceedings of this meeting can watch it live on YouTube with their smart devices or on their computers. We will be adding another streaming to Facebook Live later this spring as we get the technology worked out. And that, what I want to do is invite the residents who are watching this evening to follow the West Jordan City Council page on Facebook, which I had my note in front of me here, but I believe it's West Jordan City Council, facebook.com, West Jordan City Council. That's where the streaming will occur later this year. And there's also a council Twitter presence, WJ City Council. And that is our report for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is the City Council reports. This is for any council members who have been attending other meetings as assigned. That would be committee meetings or council committees, any of those things. Would anybody like to speak? Raise your hand, wave at me, say nasty things. Okay, just kidding. We'll start with Councilmember Green.
Although I was not able to actually sit in on the Sustainability Committee's meeting the other night, I will report that the Sustainability Committee is based on email traffic and the things that I've seen, is working very, very heavily with the event staff and community engagement to ensure that West Jordan has a good farmers market this year. And so that just to make everybody aware of that progress. And if there's any other residents who are watching this that would like to participate in the Sustainability Committee, I'm sure that they would love to have you. So you could submit your applications, but they are working on that farmer's market and some other things for the city, and just wanted to report that back.
Thank you. Councilmember Worth, and let's have you go next.
So went to the Jordan School District's board meeting last night. They've got some good things happening. West Jordan High was recognized for High School of Excellence for closing the gap for closing the gap in multicultural learning. The Jordan School District also announced the names of their it's Jordan Virtual Learning Academy. They've got Kings Peak High School, Kelsey Peak Virtual Middle School, and Rocky Peak Virtual Elementary School. So they will be having a virtual school that you can voluntarily go to next year. And if you want to find out more information on that, you can go to connect.jordandistrict.org. They also are looking for input on the new fee schedule. So they're going to be getting that out to people that live in the district so they can get the input back on that. As far as events go, we are still just moving forward with plans for the Western Stampede this year. There's a couple other events coming up. I have put out an email to everybody on council that I need to know how you would like to participate in a couple events coming up towards the end of this week. So if you can take a look at that email again, we have our Shred Day next month. And then we also have our Small and Tall Royal Ball, which has been changed to the Capes and Crowns Tour. So we have a few opportunities for council to volunteer there. So please check that email out and let me know what you would like to participate in and how. And that's all I have for tonight.
Thank you. Councilmember Pack.
Thank you, Chairman. The Healthy West Jordan Committee was able to meet after a year hiatus due to the coronavirus pandemic. So we had a meeting on the 14th and it was very productive. We talked about the Linda Butters Fun Run and how we can network with Western Stampede Committee, and there'll be more information forthcoming. We're still working on a few other items, but I just wanted to report that the Healthy West Jordan Committee is healthier this year and it was very productive. Also, the Committee for Mayoral Appointments, consisting of yourself, Chairman, and Councilmember Lamb and myself, we have conferred together regarding two pending appointments tendered to us by Mayor Burton for the Board of Adjustment. And we're happy to report that we'd forward a unanimous favorable recommendation to move those forward. And perhaps Mr. Anderson, if you wouldn't mind sending that out to all of the councils so that they're informed of their background and qualifications. I'm grateful to have residents that are stepping up and volunteering. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Is there anybody else on the council that we haven't gotten to? No. All right. I will also chime in really quickly. I have been attending the League of Cities and Towns Legislative Policy Committee meetings. During this legislative session, they take place every Monday. And I've been attending those and participating in those along with Mayor Burton and Tawny Barker from staff. They have been great. Tawny will be giving a report, I believe, here in just a minute about some of the bills that we are following and paying attention to, both as a city and the league. I think we're all on the same page there for the most part. Lots of interesting stuff going on at the legislature this year. We are not meeting in person on those. They are being conducted virtually. I believe it's on Zoom. And yeah, it's no fun to not be there in person, but it is kind of, I guess, the necessary way of doing things this year. So that is my report on that. And the next item on the list here is the mayor's report. Mayor Burton, yes, you are a panelist, so you may enlighten us, sir.
Thank you, Council Jacobs. It's a pleasure to join your meeting again today. And thank you for attending those meetings and other council members who have attended other legislative meetings. I'm doing lots of those, as you can imagine, and it's great to see council members in attendance on several of these as well. So I appreciate your participation, and it's great to let them, our legislators, know who West Jordan is and where we stand. Obviously, it's different because of COVID, and COVID has changed a lot of things. But the great thing about COVID is we have a vaccine now, and the county is going forward getting those vaccines out. They're working currently on getting our residents who are 70 and older. They're doing that. They are in the process of getting them vaccinated, and they have invited the mayors in the county to work as volunteers over at the Mountain America Expo Center over in Sandy. And I went there today and volunteered for 4 hours, along with Mayor Mike Peterson from Cottonwood Heights and Mayor Robert Hale from Midvale. And it was kind of fun here where the mayors were. We don't give the shots, but we had the assignment of after people received their first shot, they came over and saw us, and we would schedule them for their second dose to make sure they got that. Anyway, that was a great experience that we participated in today. And earlier today, I had a visit from Congressman Burgess Owens. He came into my office and visited with me for a few minutes. You may probably know that he is in the same office that the previous congressmen who handled this district were in. So it's just right over there by McDonald's, kind of behind McDonald's off of 90th South. We are, as the city, working on the budget, getting it ready to present to you for later this year. We've been actively working with staff members, and Friday we're holding our strategic planning to put a big bite in that. We will be sharing bits and pieces with you at upcoming council meetings so we can get your input to make sure that what I'm putting together matches what you want to have. So when it gets turned over to you, it should be a seamless budget to move forward. So we are actively doing that. Last week at the COG meeting, which stands for County of Government, I was elected to be vice chair. So the great thing about that is it helps West Jordan have great representation, and it moves me up to possibly the chair position next year. There's a whole lot more happening, but I'm going to turn it back to you, Chair, so you can give it to Corbin, who will let the rest of the staff carry it because there's a lot going on. Thank you. Any questions before I do that, though?
Thank you, Mayor. Let's go to Mr. Lee, the CAO, by the way, for anybody who doesn't know, is Chief Administrative Officer or City Administrative Office. I don't know. Corbin, it's
Chief. He's the chief.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're going to change the way we do CAO reports a little bit going forward and experiment with this. A slightly different format. We're going to try to keep our verbal reports to the City Council during the meeting a little more brief, and email you a more thorough CAO report at the end of council meeting each week. So tonight I'd like you to hear from our fire chief, our Economic Development Director, Chris Pangra, and then Ms. Barker on an update about the legislative efforts that she's put in and the city have put in during the start of the session. So those three department heads will give a verbal report tonight, but there'll be a little more detail and a little more information in a written report that we will send out later this evening. So if I may, Mr. Chair, turn the time over to Chief Maxfield.
go ahead. Oh, Chief Maxfield, we need to promote you to, or allow you to speak. Let me do that real quick here. All right, you should be able to unmute your microphone and go for it.
All right, there we go. Good evening, council. A lot of things have been happening in the fire department, but one of the probably, at least from my perspective, unfortunate casualties of COVID and not being able to meet together is that we don't have the opportunity to do some of our badge pinning ceremonies and recognize advancements that are taking place in the fire department. So I just wanted to report back. We've had quite a few retirements in the last 6 months to a year. And with those retirements, some open positions have been created. We just recently promoted Jared Price as our newest battalion chief. He's been with the city for about 21 years. We also hired a paramedic, Micah Chambers, and we were able to extend 3 conditional offers of employment today to 3 new firefighters. So a lot of exciting things happening. Like I said, unfortunately, we're not able to meet in person and do those ceremonies, but just wanted you to know and be aware. And that's all I've got.
Thank you, Chief. Corbin, remind me who was next.
Yeah, Chris Pangra, our Economic Development Director, and then Tawny.
Good evening, Council. Council Chair, thank you for the time. I'll just give you a brief update on our business retention and expansion efforts. The cornerstone of our economic, our economy is really founded on our businesses. They have such a huge impact on our budget, and so the easiest business to get is the one that you already have, obviously. So we want to make sure we're taking good care of them, that we understand what the risk factors are for those businesses should they get into trouble and heaven forbid need to relocate or close up shop. We want to make sure that we're aware of those risk factors and that we're also doing everything we can to support them. So as a result, we've got a 2-pronged approach to reaching out to those businesses and making sure that we're giving them the support. The first is business visitations and surveys with our largest employers. And then the second is doing, for a lot of our smaller businesses, a business survey. With the business visitations, what we've done is we've partnered with EDC Utah to they've got a program called the Know the Customer, and they routinely go out throughout the state and meet with the largest businesses in the state. We've got quite a few of those here in West Jordan, and so we've partnered with them and kind of put our toe in the water as a pilot program. We've done 4 of the surveys in cooperation with EDC Utah, and then they've done an additional 2. And they've been immensely successful. Each time we've gone through and done that survey, which takes about an hour with these businesses, we've gotten some nugget of information back, which helps us to make sure that we're cutting red tape and helping these businesses to be as successful as they can be. The businesses have responded very favorable to these surveys. And so as a result, we've determined that we're going to continue on with this partnership with EDCU, and we're targeting between 30 and 50 surveys of our largest businesses between now and the end of the fiscal year. So it's been a huge success, and we're looking forward to continuing that. And that's all I have.
Thank you. And Ms. Barker.
Thank you, Chair. It's been a busy season already at the legislature. We've had a number of bills come out in the last week. You should have received, each of you, an updated copy of our city's legislative tracker. Be aware that things will kind of pop up on this tracker as well as be pulled off as we move through the legislative session. I have added a number of notes to these bills, and I'm happy to answer questions on any of them. I'm also highlighting as the weeks go through, each week we'll have different red and yellow topics. Those will be kind of the pressing matters for this week. I did want to focus on just a couple items that are a couple ones that are before the legislature this week, and some things that I do think will be coming up. The first is House Bill 82, which is the single family housing amendments, which specifically is ADUs. One of the things that I wanted to share with you is, as I have spoken with leadership, as others in the league have spoken with leadership, one of the things that's come up is that they are very supportive of an ADU bill this year. So it is my belief at this time that an ADU bill will pass the legislature this year. with that said, I think it then puts kind of the onus on us to work with legislators to come up with the bill that is, I don't know if least bad is a word, but that's the word I'm going to use, because it's hard for us to move forward with a bill that impacts zoning. We obviously sincerely believe that that is a local control issue. Having said that, the House Bill 82 is one that the sponsor is very amenable to working with cities and towns. We have shared a number of kind of concessionary negotiated items. Some of those would bring some enforcement to I don't know how much of that you've been able to digest, but one of the things in there is that it does require the homeowner to be on site in the home when they have an ADU. We obviously know the challenge is what happens when that homeowner moves out. So one of the things we've asked for is some ability to enforce that, whether it be a lien or some other financial charge. I know you guys just had a lot of conversation about ADUs and about parking. This bill does limit the city to requiring one additional parking spot for an ADU. And that spot could be a designated street spot on the street or at the home. It will be kind of up to us to further identify what that one spot means. The representative does intend that this bill will be for one additional unit, not multiple units on the property. And that's kind of the general. So we're really working at this point on creating the best bill possible, I think, when it comes to ADUs. Do any of you have any specific questions on that bill, particularly in light of your conversation that you just had, or would you like me to move on to the remaining bills?
I do have one question, and then I'll see if anybody else does.
Yeah.
But if that bill passes, will we need to update our code to allow what the state says we have to allow, or does the state allowing it kind of just make it already there?
No, we will. That's a great question, Council Chair. We will have to update any ordinance that's passed prior to this going into effect to reflect this bill. We will not be grandfathered in to something that's been passed previously.
Yeah, what I mean is if we don't pass anything,
If-
we'll to pass something to reflect what the state says we have to allow.
Yes, yeah, I'd encourage you to pass something, because I think there are opportunities for you to still customize an ADU ordinance that better matches our city beyond what this bill allows for.
Got it. Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions on the ADU bill at this point? I don't see any. Go ahead.
Okay. With that said, this bill is being heard on Friday by committee. We do have a legislator that is a member of that committee, Representative Tusher. I did have a long conversation. He was very generous with his time. We had a long conversation about this bill and a few of the others that we're looking at closely. He did tell me that he does intend to vote in favor of this bill, but does so understanding our position and with the hope that we will be able to get a substitute presented to the committee on Friday with some of these concessions that we're asking for. So if you're so inclined, you may want to tune into that Friday afternoon. The other bill that we're working and looking really closely at is House Bill 98. That is the bill that deals with inspections. The representative who's running this bill doesn't seem to be inclined to make a lot of concessions on it, nor do I think we are at a place where we're super interested in making concessions. You may remember this bill from last year. It was run as House Bill 374 and didn't make it out of committee last year. So we'll be watching this closely. It hasn't been assigned a calendar date yet, but I'll let you know when that does. I have spoken further to all of our legislators about this and asked them to oppose the bill. Two things that we're going to be looking for in the next week that you should watch for is language on an omnibus affordable housing bill. I do anticipate that as a part of this bill, we will be asked to adopt additional, I think right now we have to adopt 3 affordable housing options. And I believe that based on the size of our city, this bill will ask us to adopt more. There's a lot of support for this bill. Senator Anderegg has worked very closely with the land use committee and with others. So he's built a pretty good consensus, but I'm going to encourage you to watch for that to come out, because I do feel like that is going to have a pretty strong impact on the city. And then did want to mention, I know you were made aware earlier today of Senate Bill 18, which is a taxation bill. Watch for some alterations in the language of that bill. It did go through the Senate committee and it did pass. And we did have 2 senators who are on the committee who were very aware of our position on that particular bill. But one of them was running the bill and the other had supported it pretty handily. So it was unlikely we were going to change their minds on that. Other than that, we're really watching a lot of law enforcement bills. And at this time, as I close out, I'd just like to comment on the strength and reputation of our wonderful police chief, Chief Wallentyne. There isn't a meeting I attend with other individuals, representatives from cities, legislators, where his name is not brought up in reverence. He is such an asset to our city and such a well-respected member of the community. And I'm very grateful to be able to work work with him. And I hope that when you see him, you can also compliment the work that he's put in this year with so many parties on the law enforcement legislation that's before the state. That's all I have at this time, unless you have any questions for me.
I did see Councilmember Worthen's hand be raised briefly. No,
Okay.
apparently not. By the way, that HB 82 bill, the ADU bill, is in the House Business and Labor Committee.
Yes, sorry. Yep.
On Friday, if you're interested in tuning in. It's an odd committee for that bill to be assigned to, but who can?
It's probably the most challenging committee for our issues to be passed off to. That's what I'll say.
There you go. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we will move on forward then. Oh, excuse me. Councilmember Pack may have a question for you. Tani, don't go away.
Well, thank you. Not so much a question, Chairman. Just wanted to say thanks to Mayor Burton and all his staff for always reaching out to us and communicating with us. And Ms. Barker, the communications that you send and how proactive you are, and definitely concur with the blessing of having Chief Wallentyne and Chief Maxfield. And I'm grateful for the collaboration that we have between the 2 branches of government, given that we're just 1 year into differentiating between the 2 branches of government and working together. So thank you for keeping us informed and working together. And the same with Chris Pengra, same with everyone that's been reporting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And let's move on then to unfinished business reports. This is some of the unfinished business that we have started to consider on the council. You could add ADUs to this for the foreseeable future. We have PC Hillside Zone text amendments coming, let's see, it was continued until January 5th from the Planning Commission. So I'm not sure where that is right now. Is there an update on this one, Alan, or on the Hillside text amendments? I'm not sure where that is.
No, I think the public hearing was held during the Planning Commission, and I think that's still in process. You'd have to possibly check with Scott on its update.
Thank you. We're also looking at design standards for industrial zones. That's going to be coming from the Land Use Committee eventually, Land Use Subcommittee. So we'll be watching for that. No big hurry, I think, on that one. And then the storage of commercial vehicles. We discussed this last year in a couple of meetings, and it's been referred back to staff, and that will be coming up on a future agenda. Once again, keep an eye on the agenda tracker, the agenda planning tracker spreadsheet thing that is on the shared drive. And moving on then from unfinished business, we'll go to our first business item of the night. And this is a presentation on renovations of City Hall. And we will give this over to Mr. Lee to present.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you advance the slide? Let me give you a little bit of background on where we're at. This is just an FYI item. We want to fill you in and make sure you're up to speed on some of the work that's been done. As you know, 2 years ago, as we were preparing for the change in the form of government, we started talking about the need for changes to the space and layout of City Hall to accommodate the change of form of government and just make better use of the City Hall space in general. We started looking into that internally, started batting around a few ideas. It quickly became apparent that we needed, and to get the most effective use out of this building and this investment that the taxpayers have made in this building, we needed some professional help to walk through the design and walk through some space analysis of this building with us. So in this current budget, the City Council, you set aside some money to do a more formal City Hall space study. We hired JRCA architects to help us with this space study. We wanted this tonight is to just give you an update on where we stand. This space study is really important because the city building is almost 30 years old, and it used to house the court, it used to house the police department, it used to house actually attorney's offices for the district attorney's office. It used to house public works employees here, the Chamber of Commerce. Now we have uses that were never anticipated 30 years ago, like victim advocates and a passport office. And so this is a good time to say, all right, how can we make this building the most effective building possible for the next 30 years? And how can we, by making adjustments now, really extend the life of this building and extend the efficient use of this building as far as possible? Will you go to the next slide, please? So some of the goals we have for doing this space study I mentioned is making the most effective and efficient use for this building over the next 30 years. We want to do that in the most cost-effective way. So you'll notice as we've been doing the space use analysis, we're avoiding making changes to the building that are really the expensive parts of the building. The lobby area, the elevator shafts, the stairwells, the primary restrooms for public access, those won't be changing in terms of layout or anything like that. But we do want to make the building function better for the public. So we are looking at how does the public interact with this space, both while the employees are here and they're interacting with city services, or while the public is renting, for example, the community room. How can we give them better access to the community room on evenings and weekends without opening up the entire building to public access? This building is an incredible investment in our community, and we want to make sure that it's a good, positive recruiting tool for our employees who work within the building. We want to make sure the building benefits the employees who work here. And are there things we can do with the way the building is designed to improve our benefit to the employees? And then we're doing a thorough study of our operating systems within the building, the HVAC and so on, to try to reduce our ongoing building expenses and make the building as cost effective as possible for the long run. And then finally, one of the goals is to just create spaces that have greater flexibility for changing uses in the future. Just as 30 years ago, we never anticipated that city halls would house passport services or victim advocate support. Today, we can't anticipate what City Hall might be used for 30 years from now. And so what we can do is try to make spaces that are flexible and spaces that provide great public access and great kind of access for possible city functions in the future, while minimizing the need for even further renovations in the future. So that's a lot of goals. That's a very ambitious project. With that, I'd like to turn the time over to Scott Holmes and Matt Green from JRCA Architects. if you can promote them to panelists so they can continue the rest of their presentation and share with you the things they've been doing to try to achieve these goals that are a part of this study.
Okay, that was Scott Holmes, and who was the other one?
Matthew Green or Matt Green.
All right, gentlemen, just give it a second. You should be ready to go. Do you need to share a screen?
I think all the images we're going to share tonight are in this PowerPoint.
In the PowerPoint. Okay, excellent. I like it. All right, you guys should be able to speak now. Except you just muted yourself.
Scott, you're on mute.
Matthew, however, is not.
There we go.
There we go.
The bugs, they're right, the bugs. So, well, thank you, Corbin and council. Good to be with you here tonight. Just wanted to lead off here and make some brief introduction to our team. We also have on this this session here with us our principal in charge, Gordon Clark, as well as myself, again, Scott Holmes, project manager, project architect for this project, and then along with Matthew Green, who will be taking you through the majority of our presentation material here this evening. But again, we are grateful to be a part of this project. It is important for the not only the future of the citizens, but also your population growth. And as Corbin noted, your ongoing changes in use, facilitating the needs for for the citizens of West Jordan. So as this building that you reside in is over 30 years, and now it is time to take a bit of a snapshot of where things were, how things currently are, and where things can be in the future to better align with services provided, the positions that West Jordan fulfills from a staffing standpoint. And again, how can we better improve upon the workflow and management of personnel and services to the citizen group. So we have been working with Mayor Burton and Corbin since early in the summer. We have gone through a few different processes that I'll let Matt talk to you about here in a little bit more detail. So after this session, we do have some other goals and up and coming tasks that we will be performing in preparation to create a more formal draft documentation and present our findings and guidance of how we can move forward with West Jordan City's support, council support, and administration support to see this exciting project move forward. So with that, I'll turn it over to Matt.
Great, thanks for your time tonight, Council. We started this project and wanted to make sure we had a very good grasp of the needs of the project, both from a leadership level. So we started with a tour of the building with Mayor Burton and Corbin, and then also at a department level. As we moved on from that initial view of the building with Mayor Burton and Corbin, we verified the record documents that we have of the building, just to make sure that our plan that we have is matching the building as accurately as possible. So that took some time to do that. And then we also, during that time of verifying the verification of the plan, verified the current location of the departments and their relationship to each other. As we started to develop our understanding of the departments and their needs, we went through a series of needs assessments and questionnaires and interviews in order to better understand the departments and their roles and how they interacted with each other and with the public. We also wanted to understand from a leadership level how the department saw their growth in the upcoming decades, and to make sure that when we did plan out the spaces that you have enough within each department for the growth that's estimated within the city. As we went to the next step in our process before getting into the diagrams that we'll be showing you further on in the slides, we created a needs assessment document that shows us all the information in one place that we've gathered from the city. This is the first slide, the first sheet of that needs assessment, showing all of the different departments, their design square footage is both net square footage and gross, showing us the overall area of the building that we have, as well as the area of the building that we're planning and designing for, which shows from our numbers here, you can see here that we have just over 11,000 square feet within the building that is unused in our programming, which gives you some other opportunities that we'll discuss further on. If you want to go to the next slide. This is one of the department needs summaries that we developed for the community engagement department, just showing you how we analyzed the spaces as well as the growth estimated over the next 30 years, and then as well as what types of spaces are needed and square footages that would be appropriate for each space. And then this gives us the ability as well to record any information, detailed information we need as far as what kind of customers are accessing these departments, what kind of supply storage is needed, opportunities for break opportunities or copy room opportunities, things like that. If we want to move on to the next slide, after developing those.
Let me interrupt really quick if I can. We have a council member with a question.
Oh, yes.
Councilmember Pack, did you have a question? Your hand's up. Oh, he's shaking his head no. So I'm going to assume he.
I don't think it was taken down before, or it was inadvertently raised. Thank you, Chair.
I'm on it. Okay, never mind. Carry on.
We took this information from the needs assessments that we developed, and from that information, we developed these diagrams for the floor plates of each level of the building, and trying to utilize those in the most appropriate way for the correct relationships to the community, as well as to internal relationships between departments. So we can see on the first floor, and we'll get into these in more detail, but primarily we kept the departments that have the most interaction with the public: the passport office, events and communications, community development, customer service and recorders offices, the victim advocates, the community room, and then the locker room and exercise room, relatively in the same space as it is currently. These departments we felt like had a very strong connection to the city and the community, and needed to have a public interface that brought them down to the first floor. In the second floor, we kept the information technology in the IT department in the same basic location, but brought their spaces together and expanded the areas needed for the growth that they have. One of the moves that we made into the second floor is the code enforcement being brought up to the second floor, so it's in a better relationship to the community development. If we can go back to the slide, sorry, I'll just briefly describe where they're at, and then we'll go into more detail. The HR department's on this level as well. And then as we go to the third level, we have the administration, department, economic development, attorneys, and the accounting departments. And we felt like those departments could be comfortably put on the third floor level, giving better views out to the valley, as well as our less interface with the public. We can move on to the next floor. The next slide. So this is the first floor on the north side of the building. You can see we kept the restrooms in the same places we talked about with that Corbin talked about, trying to keep those essential facilities there where they're so that there's not a lot of added cost. We felt that the customer service location currently was a good location to build off of. And so we have the customer service there with their waiting area there at the front as you enter, is that idea with that connection to the atrium. And then as you get into this, into the customer service, we also have the passport office in close relationship to that, and events and communication on the east side of the building. This space over here on the left, which is the shell space, is some of that extra space that, as we spoke with Corbin and Mayor Burton, we felt like it was advantageous to have that shell space that could be taken up by future needs for the city with a close relationship to the community. We have some restrooms there, and the idea of this is that we would have a shared entrance point there for the passport office, as well as for that shell area and access to restrooms. We can go on to the next slide unless anyone has to add. Corbin. On the south side of the first floor, we have one of the main things we wanted to accomplish here, and with was expressed by Corbin and Mayor Burton, was this idea of the community room having access that's not allowing full access to the city hall. We accomplished this by creating an entrance corridor there on the south west side of the building, which allows access to the victim advocates, a space that will be a shell space initially, but that could facilitate a future health clinic for city staff and their families. And then the locker room here, utilizing the space that's currently taken up by the locker room and the restrooms, and reorganizing that to be a better relationship and better locker to sex ratio within the city hall, so that there's equal opportunity for all staff members. A small bike area there for storage for anyone who would be commuting with bikes for safe storage of their vehicles, and then some shell space up at the top, which is again just some extra space there that was left over in the plan as far as the programming goes, that allows for future use by the city. The community room was also designed. Right now we don't have any solid walls in this. This is an idea of relationships within the building and between departments. But the community room we wanted to size large enough to add some needed storage there for whatever storage would need to be accessed, so that people aren't having to go throughout the city hall to access anything. We move on to the next slide. On the second floor on the north side.
One more second, sorry. We got a council member with a question. One more time, Councilmember Worthen.
Just back on that last slide, the victim advocates, is that where the passport office is now? Am I seeing that correctly?
Yes, currently.
Have we spoken with them about that area? Are they comfortable with that? Because I know that they deal with some sensitive issues and safety of people.
Councilman, Matt, can I answer that?
Yeah.
Councilwoman Worthen, that's why we put them there, so they could have a private entrance and a kind of a confidentiality entrance separate from coming through the main lobby of City Hall. Very close to the parking lot, but a separate confidential entrance so they can come in through that door rather than through the main lobby.
Okay, so it's something that they're okay with, and
Yeah, we believe so. We're still
Okay.
refining everything, but we think this is a very good place for them.
thank you.
On the second floor on the north side, one of the main, other than the restroom there, which we're keeping in the spot that it's at,
Matt,
one of the big.
One
sorry.
more question. Sorry about that. We got Councilmember McConaughey with a question.
Apologies. If we could go back to the prior slide? This may not be the forum for it, but future health clinic, why would we want that or need that when we got the county health department right next door? Or is that a question for a different forum?
So let me chime in on that too, if I may. I mentioned one of the goals is to make the building as accessible for the public, but also how do we make the space benefit the employees as much as possible. One of the ideas we're considering, we haven't done our thorough analysis yet, but we are starting to consider the possibility of adding an internal health clinic for our employee base and their families. If we do a health clinic like that, the idea is that we can reduce our utilization of health insurance, and by reducing our utilization of health insurance, capture those savings and possibly provide a healthcare clinic for an amount that actually saves the city money and at the same time provides better health care access for our employees. It's still got a lot of work. We still got some study to do, but we want to do in our design of this reserve a space that could be used for that. Now, if that doesn't work out or we decide ultimately that the health clinic isn't the direction we want to go, this space is a good isolated space with a separate entrance that could be used for a number of other possible uses. So it's a conversation about a health clinic is a conversation we need to come back and discuss with the city council in the future as we flesh it out a little bit more and think about it and do a little more research on it. But it is something we've seen Salt Lake City do, UTA, Sandy, large corporations have done it, and it helps stabilize rising health insurance costs and actually provides a very good health benefit for the employees and their families. So it is something we want to look at and just, at a minimum in this plan at least, set aside some space for it in case we do go that direction.
And of course, the bike storage was the mayor's idea.
You know what? I'm the one who pushed for the bike storage. I want a space where our employees, we have a number of employees that ride bikes. The mayor's the most visible, but they ride their bike, which I'd love, but then they carry their bike through City Hall and up and down carpeted stairs and store it in their office. And I want to give employees a space where they can protect their bike, get it out of the weather, make it so it's not visible, to want to be stolen, but not have them bring their bikes all the way through City Hall. I don't like to see bikes brought up and down the elevators or up and down the stairs in the main part of the lobby. So I suggested we do a small bike storage next to the exercise room. We also hope that maybe employees may bring a bike, leave it there, and then bike for exercise on their lunch breaks or other things.
And you're right, Councilman. I was not in opposition to that.
Any other thoughts, comments before we move on to the second floor, I think? Second floor. Okay, let's go.
Great. Second floor north side, like I said, we have one of those anchors that we used within our design was the restroom location. The other one was, as you can see, the vertical pattern in the middle. That is the server room that we obviously don't want to move because that is cost prohibitive. And so we've built the information technology area out away from that towards the north, and tried to give them a better layout for their, or a better spatial relationship for their offices and their needs for storage. As we move through this plan, we have the HR department, and we included training in that as well. That is something that Corbin and Mayor Burton were expressing a need for, is some space where tables can be set up and where we can have different opportunities for training and training resources within the city hall. On the east side of the building there, we had the code enforcement office there that will allow for code enforcement and community development to be in a better relationship. And then the last thing we had there in the east side of the building was a break room there, which is a communal break room for the building for staff to gather for their lunches and breaks. Now we can move on to the next slide. Thank you. We're leaving the community developments area pretty much the same that it is now. That has been recently remodeled from what we understand, and it is functioning relatively well. The only thing that we really see happening maybe in this area is the opportunity for another conferencing space other than the large conferencing room that they have that might better suit them for different size meetings they may have.
I would like to see a better design for that conference room that's on that floor. I've been in that room many times, and I'm not sure who designed it, but there's got to be a better way to lay out a conference room in that area. So
it's tiny.
It's just the way it's set up is just, I don't know. So Corbin, when you guys are looking at that, maybe find a more aesthetic way to have that conference room that's right there at the front.
Yeah, that's a good comment. That is the one request that Scott made for this area, and that the architects noticed as well, is that conference room could use some work. I agree, but we're probably going to have that lower on the priority list.
That's okay.
We can move on to the next slide. For the third floor on the north side, this floor has some pretty substantial reorganization that we'd like to go over. The first off is moving the city council over to this side of the building on the west side to give a better relationship and connection to the city council chambers, as well as providing a sizable work session room on the east side there, where you can break out into that space for other meetings. You can notice the line, the purple line there in that hallway. The idea in this is that there would be a separation there that could be closed so that there's a separate access to the work session room from the city council side versus the public side. As well as the conversation in this is to provide some restrooms in the city council area so that city council members can utilize a restroom without having to interface with the public. We've decided that in that other, on the east side there's also an area there that's tucked in behind the stairs that could serve as a break cove area for both the city council and the accounting office, but also provide an opportunity for catering within the work sessions. On the north side, we have the accounting department there to utilize that space on the north. The idea here would just be to try to open up a better entrance opportunity for the city council chambers, as well as strong connection points for the city council to move in and out of that space.
Is it the intent on this one to leave that little, I mean, I see the moving of the wall, kind of how we have this weird little, I don't know, half a hexagon trapezoidal shape
Cove, yeah.
over here in the corner of the city council chamber currently. And I see moving that wall out to be equal to the end of this council chambers. I like that idea. But then there's this little triangle wedge.
Yeah, I should have just filled that in with the council chambers.
Squared that up with one or the other. Okay. I was just
Yeah.
curious as to which way that squared up.
Yeah, we obviously would not want to keep a dead space like that.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. We move to the next slide. Unless there's any other questions.
Actually, Matt, can we go back to that slide? If I could make one point of observation here, to reinforce the work we've done with Mayor Burton and Corbin, and that Matt's efforts have put into this. One of the other ideas here for the council to be informed about is this is also an opportunity to create some more secure access for your engagement with the community, but also your general access into the building and into the workspaces and council chambers, utilizing that northeast stair component as a potential secure access point. Again, we want to be mindful of not only creating an opportunity for staff members to enter the building and the spaces without, with the sense of security, or also have the opportunity to engage these spaces via the public atrium spaces also. So we're affording both opportunities, but also being mindful of current political climates and opinions, and trying to create a balance of security, but also maintain a transparency within the public.
Thank you. We do have two questions from council for this area here. It looks like Councilmember Whitelock first.
Thank you. So I don't know if it's a question as much as a comment. In the council area, not every council member stores their personal items in their pocket. And it would be really nice if we had somewhere that we could secure our personal items while we're meeting. So just for everyone to keep in mind as we're working on this, because it would just be nice. Thank you.
I agree. I like that idea. Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Chair. So the thing that hits me a little bit weird is accounting kind of floating over here in their own little island hidden behind council chambers and not next to customer service. I would think that those two would go together just based on the relation between customer bills and everything that hits accounting plus customer service. So that seems a little bit weird to me. Plus it also, the other thought was seeing some of the unallocated shell space on the first floor. I think I'd kind of like to see if there's extra or unallocated space, kind of see it up over here to give us a little bit more room to work with. But that just seemed a little bit weird seeing that accounting island up here. Also seemed weird that accounting needs less space. Maybe this is just visually, I'm not recalling, but it seemed like events was using more space than accounting, and that seemed a little odd, but I may be off there. Those were my observations. Thank you, Chair.
We've done a number of different shifts within our diagramming, which we can continue to look a little deeper into that. One of the things that was discussed through Corbin and Mayor Burton in regards to the accounting aspect, as well as the shell space below, mostly the shell space below, is the idea that if that shell space is being utilized and needs an interface with the public rather than trying to come through the entirety of the city hall to get to that location. As far as the events, it was that events and communications were brought together in that, and so the actual events part of that is not as large as that whole diagram there that you saw in the first.
There's some overlap between those spaces in general. So, real quickly back to Councilmember Whitlock's comments about personal storage space. That is an item we have discussed and we have on our radar as we work through organizing the spaces and layout of that city council office space. So with the immediate and direct access from the dais into those areas, you would be able to easily access some type of personal storage, whether we create some locker opportunities, something that you can utilize your own punch code, key codes to have access to and store your personal items in that space.
And we can move on to the next slide. On the south side of the third floor, I'm sorry for the attorney's office being so light. That didn't look that way on my screen when I put this together. But we decided on this third floor to put the administration on that southwest facing part of the building to allow the administration to have access to views of the valley for their conference room, as well as to provide a good location from the elevators for access to that administration area. We created this access corridor for the other two departments here, as well as access to the exit stair there in the south side of the building. Economic development coming on the east, southeast side there, and then the attorneys back behind the economic development. The idea here with the location of the economic development versus the attorney's office was the idea of visibility and the idea of the attorneys being more or less shielded from a community, a more community view, so that they can keep a good relationship as far as what their purpose is. The other idea here is that this location here gives access to the attorneys from the administration office or from the other offices on the floor that would need to reference them for any reason. The idea here with the economic development and the administration is that there would be some shared opportunities for conferencing and other opportunities that make great. And as far as that goes, Scott, do you have anything to add?
Maybe if we could go back to the first diagram, the stacking diagram, a few slides previous, real quickly, and I could summarize. So as we've gone through this process, there's also discussing what are appropriate adjacencies and relationships within departments or interfaces with public. We have also taken into consideration how does all of this work in a phased approach, and that's also supported a bit of our decisions here as we presented these organizations to the council this evening, is that we're trying to be mindful of an approach that only requires maybe one or two departments to have to temporarily relocate no more than one time potentially, or if there's opportunities to rework areas so there's only one movement of staff and furnishings, wayfinding changes, those sort of elements. So we've been mindful of that as well, and we're continuing to fine tune how that phasing opportunity will ultimately work. But we feel that we are on a good path to ensuring that we are disrupting the staff workflow and also public access to be the most minimal as possible in this process. The other value in moving forward here, at least within the immediate future, depending on the council's guidance moving forward and our next steps in the process of presenting budgeting information and our final review and analyses of the building systems, the electrical, mechanical, again, how all that works in a phased approach. We'll be able to present back to the council a larger picture of how this can be completed within a reasonable timeline, but also potentially take advantage of current working remotely or working outside of this building currently and in the immediate future also has its benefits. So with all that combined, if we can go back to the slide we were previously on here, and we can continue this presentation. So again, to summarize, our next step here is fine-tuning these relationship diagrams, taking into consideration and reviewing the comments that the council has given us this evening. We will work back with Mayor Burton and Corbin to fine-tune and try to implement those ideas to the best that we can, and then bring them back ultimately in a draft report to the council. I've also mentioned the building system analysis. Again, that is currently ongoing with our mechanical and electrical engineers. We're still working on gathering some finite information that will allow us to make some efficiencies or create efficiencies in our plans moving forward, and our recommendations to staff for building system upgrades or equipment change outs or those types of items. And also, obviously, the most important, again, is budgeting. So once we get our head wrapped around our final idea of space adjacencies, the phasing opportunities, all the other elements related to upgrading the building finishes, furniture items as well, then we'll be able to create a more comprehensive budget outlook, which can be broken down into the phases as well. So we can present that again back to council for consideration. So those are our next steps. I'll turn it back over to Corbin if he has some closing remarks, or if there are any other questions from the council that we can answer for you tonight.
I don't have any other remarks other than to entertain any questions.
One question has popped up. Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Chair. My apologies for the question about accounting. Mr. Anderson's informed me of some changes and lack of connection or autonomy where finance or accounting is not connected to the other elements. So my comment can be disregarded. My apologies for that tangent.
Anybody else have a quick comment or question for the architects or staff on this item? I would hope that we as a council don't get too involved in the weeds as far as, we really think this wall should go over there, or this window should be removed, that kind of stuff. Please don't get into that kind of weeds with us. Just let us know how much it's going to cost. And the rest of it, I think, is kind of up to administration, for my 2 cents. What's that? Sorry, go ahead, Councilmember McConaughey.
So the last comment, if we're not to get into that, I guess my question is, what would the purpose of bringing this to the council be? What is being looked for from the council?
Yeah, I'm guessing, Corbin, I won't answer for you, but my 2 cents is the budget. And when they come to us and say, hey, we got a $5 million renovation for City Hall, we're going to want to say, well, what is that? So that's.
I think there's a balance. We want you to be informed. We want you to be supportive. So we want to bring this back to you along the way, show you where we think this will go. We are gonna at some point going to need to talk about how to pay for this and how to budget for it over time. But it will be tempting to get into the weeds. And I think the council about not getting into the weeds on which wall goes where is a good one. So right now we just want to keep you informed. That's the primary purpose of bringing it to you. As we iron out further details and debate pros and cons of walls and offices and conference rooms and so on, we'll bring you back what we consider to be a more refined plan. Again, once we have it totally completed, cost estimated, and so on. But right now, we're just bringing this to you so you feel well informed and so you feel a sense of where we're headed with this proposal.
Thank you. Councilmember Worth.
Yeah, I don't want to get in the weeds. I just want to pick the paint colors for like everybody's office. Is that okay? Can you do that? Okay. Okay, as long as we got that agreed. I got to pick everybody's office in the whole building.
Swatches.
So
all the swatches.
I called it. Called it.
So if I could chime in real quickly, part of this process is obviously upgrading the building's finishes and colorways as things have become dated and need to be replaced. But we're currently, as part of this process, working on a digital color board that once we review it internally with staff and get the strong recommendation, that information will be part of our final report and available for council to review. So,
Okay, just be forewarned, I really like neons. I'm totally joking. I hope you got that.
I would say that may not be a weed so much as an overall landscape plan.
Totally joking, but hey, gotta have some fun with it, right?
Good.
This is
That's
fun
right.
work, design
That's
work. Are
right.
you kidding? This is the best.
Thank you.
We agree. We agree.
Those weeds are called native grasses.
Right. All right. Well, thanks, Scott and Matthew and Corbin, for that overview and sneak preview of what will be coming down the pike.
Great. Thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
No problem. Assuming there's no further questions, let's move on to the next item on the agenda. Business item 5B. This is consider resolution 21-003 adopting the 2019 Salt Lake County Multi-Jurisdictional Hazard Mitigation Plan, West Jordan City Jurisdictional Annex. I almost got through it. Jared Smith, are you with us and are you presenting on this or is it somebody else? Jared Smith, let's see, you're getting promoted right now. I was about to do it and Alan beat me to it. There you are. The time is yours, sir. You're muted. Most common phrase of 2020.
Thank you. Sorry about that. But thank you,
It's
Council.
2021, by the way, just
Council
in case you
Chair.
missed it.
We present, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we presented the multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan. It has to be approved by City Council per our code and with City Attorney's recommendation that the City Council sign off on it. This is a plan that FEMA asks cities and counties to put together every 5 years to ensure that we're addressing the hazards. If we have hazards that are prone to high risk or to damage, then the FEMA wants us to make sure we're addressing those and are working towards them so that we're not just waiting for the next disaster, then asking for a handout for repairs to those hazards or those risks. So this is a plan that we put together. It's specific to the city of West Jordan. Although it is combined, you combine all the other cities in the county together and it creates the county annex or the county plan. The city is just one of those parts of the plan. So as you can see in the annex in the plan, we have addressed some of the biggest natural hazards that could have faced the city. Obviously, the biggest one being the earthquake, some flooding, mudslides, fires. And one of the big things that FEMA wants us to do is make sure as a city that we're taking a multifaceted approach to addressing those hazards, not just a single point. So a lot of that is coming through building codes, making sure that our building codes are up to date, making sure that if we can address any of these through our city code, that we're taking a chance to address those through the city code. So if you had a chance to review it, or if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer any questions, Council, or if you have anything specific you'd like me to address, I'm happy to do that as well.
Is there any questions for staff on this? Oh, hang on, let me flip my screen back over. Okay. Any questions at all? I'm seeing no questions. Oh, there's a question. It came finally. Councilmember Green.
I'm just curious. There's and this was in Taylorsville, so because I got that far. But there is a landslide susceptibility map. It's about page 664 of the packet, like anybody reads these. But I'm just curious. It shows that the landslide risks in West Jordan and anything that are very small. But when I was in the Guard, I remember that there were some, that if we had an earthquake, that there was an area immediately to the east of West Jordan City. We won't mention that it was the Sharon Steel site, that shows that had a serious potential for landslide. I'm just wondering, have things changed, or is that particular site not susceptible to slides anymore? I'm just curious, because I think that would directly affect at least our eastern border. I'm just wondering.
It's a great question, Councilor Green. I'm afraid I'm not prepared to really answer that directly. I'm not super familiar with the site. I know that the county did have their GIS technicians take a look and put together these maps, based off of county data. And so we have addressed those. We have taken a look at them. I'm just not so familiar with that specific site particularly.
All right, I'm just, it's just one of those things that we always planned when I was doing emergency drills for the Guard, that if we had a major earthquake, that had a good potential for sliding. And like I said, I didn't see it in Taylorsville. So, and it was in the Taylorsville section, but I was just curious. So it may be just something that someday we can ask the question, but thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks, Council. Is that separate from liquefaction? The landsliding is I know that down.
It actually was separate than the liquefaction. This was, the anticipation is that Sharon Steel site, the way it was built, would slide. And it was on some slide maps. So that's why I'm just wondering.
Oh, we'll take a look at it. Thank you for your input.
Anybody else with questions for staff or discussion or a motion? Councilmember McConaughey.
There we go. I move to approve resolution 21-003.
We have a motion.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Councilmember McConaughey, seconded by Councilmember Green. This is a resolution, requires a roll call vote. Ms. Quick.
Thank you. Let's start with Councilmember McConaughey.
Aye.
Councilmember Pack.
Yes.
Councilmember Whitelock.
Yes.
Councilmember Green.
Yes.
Councilmember Worthen.
Yes.
Chair Jacob.
Yes.
And Councilmember Lamb.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion passes 7-0.
Thank you, Council. We will now move to the next item on the agenda. This would be 5C, business item 5C, consider ordinance number 21-01, amending the City of West Jordan's annual budget for fiscal year 2020-2021. There's a lot of 20s in that. Denise Steck, this one is for you, and you are with us.
Great. Chair Jacob, would you mind letting me share my screen for a moment so I can put up one slide?
I wouldn't mind. I will turn over to our staff here to make the necessary tweaks to the Zoom.
Okay, so you should be seeing the ordinance, or you should be seeing a slide now. Is that correct? It
Yes,
should say,
ma'am.
good.
FY 2022 budget amendment.
Perfect. Chair Jacob asked me to be brief in a summary since we had a public hearing, I apologize, last meeting, and explained to you all of the items that are on this budget amendment. It was a quite large budget amendment and we went through them item by item. So ordinance number 2101 is amending the budget, and this is a summary of the amendments. So the general fund requesting revenue of $11.3 million and expenditures of $8.9 million, and putting the remainder back into reserves, which will provide us with a balanced budget. And then the other funds as followed. The total amendment would increase revenues for the city in general by $13.7 million and expenditures by $16.5 million. The difference between the revenue and expenditures is coming out of reserves, with the majority of it being bond proceeds from the water fund for the building of the water tank. And those were bond proceeds from the 2017 issuance that are still under construction. So I'm open to answer any questions about Ordinance 2101. And you probably have them from the last work session if you have any. Otherwise, we're asking for your approval of the budget amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise. And that was brief. Quite. Anybody have any questions on the budget amendment and or discussion and or a motion and or comments?
Move to approve ordinance 21-01.
And I'll second.
All right, this is moving right along. We have a motion by Councilmember McConaughey and a second by Councilmember Green. Any discussion to the motion? Councilmember McConaughey.
Yeah, administrative discussion. If when we have this, it's possible to have the larger text up on the screen so we could see the motion, that would be helpful. That's all.
There you go. Sorry, it's a juggling act up here. Any other discussion to the motion?
My hand's up. I don't know if you can see it or not.
I can. Your hand, when it pops up on my screen, pops up a different color than everybody else's. It's kind of weird. Councilmember Whitelock, thank you.
Thank you. I simply want to thank Ms. Steck for her work on this and for her looking at ways to help our city be in a better financial place. So thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any further discussion, and I will watch more carefully for hands. I'm seeing none. Let's go ahead and vote. Ms. Quick.
Thank you. We'll start with Councilmember Green,
Yes.
Councilmember Worthen,
Yes.
Chair Jacob,
Yes.
Councilmember Lamb,
Yes.
Councilmember McConaughey,
Aye.
Councilmember Pack,
Yes.
Councilmember Whitelock.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion passes 7-0.
Thanks, Council.
Thank you. And moving right along, council business item 5D, consider ordinance 21-03, amending the 2009 West Jordan City Code section 1-7-2 and 1-11A-18, mayor's compensation. This one has Duncan Murray's name on it, but we'll turn the time to Rob Wall.
Thank you, Chairman Jacob. I'll handle this matter. I told Duncan to sign off for the night, so he didn't need to sit through the meeting. You've probably all read the staff report. This is I hate to use the phrase, but it is what it is. It's a cleanup ordinance. It addresses two things generally. One is that now the form of government has changed, and we're over a year into that. The provision that previously existed in the code setting the mayor's salary for the first year is no longer necessary. And we'll be coming back to the council frequently over the next period of time, asking you to delete some of those references now that a year has passed, but this is one of those. The other issue that's addressed here is that you may recall last year when the council set the mayor's budget, there were a couple of changes that were made during council meeting to that ordinance. In that process, there were two existing provisions in the code that no longer became necessary. So this amendment also removes those provisions related to the cost of living increase for the mayor's salary. These amendments will bring the code into compliance with the current practice now.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Wall? Open up to the council. Councilmember McConaughey.
If there are no questions, I'm ready to make a motion.
Are there any questions? I'd like to give everybody at least 10 or 15 seconds, you know. All right, I'm not seeing any questions. Go ahead, Councilmember McConaughey.
It's only been about 7 seconds. You want me to hold up?
You're good.
All right, I'll move to approve ordinance 21-03.
I second.
Now we're talking. Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember McConaughey and a very speedily spoken second by Councilmember Worthen. Any discussion to the motion? Seeing none, let's vote.
Let's start with Chair Jacob.
Yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Lamb,
Yes.
Councilmember McConaughey,
Aye.
Councilmember Pack,
Yes.
Councilmember Whitelock,
Yes.
Councilmember Green,
Yes.
and Councilmember Worthen.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion passes 7-0.
All right, and moving right along. Business item 5E, Community Renewable Energy Act update. And this one is our council office director, Councilman. I will do that forever. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you. Let me get this set here. Okay, so back at the end of 2019, there was a provision for cities around the state to partner in this Community Renewable Energy Act, also called House Bill 411. So the council passed that, and at the time, the council had asked that it come back when there's additional information to provide, which Tawny or Ms. Barker will speak to. But the CREA provides cities with mechanisms to establish and achieve a goal of source net 100% renewable energy, electrical energy with Rocky Mountain Power by 2030. That is renewable energy resources that are replenished by wind, solar, thermal, geothermal, or hydroelectric. And that's kind of what this is. So back in 2019, when the council first decided this, it was a previous council, previous to the change in form of government. They wanted this to be brought back. And so Ms. Barker now has some additional information as she reports to you as requested back then. So if I can turn the time over to Ms. Barker.
Ms. Barker.
Thank you. Alan, do we, oh, perfect. I was just going to say, do we have the additional slides to this? I think we can skip over the overview. I think Alan gave you a really good idea of where we were at. I would just note that 23 Utah cities and counties approved to adopt this renewable electricity program by 2030. We were one of those. Since that time, two of the communities have dropped out. The two communities that have dropped out are Ogden and also West Valley City. So if you'll go to the update page, I think Alan covered all this pretty well. Let's just talk about the update and hopefully get you guys out of here on time. I don't know if on time, but early. Over the last year, we've worked with the other cities to meet in determining the governing principles for this new program, rate design, and projected costs on this. I believe this process has gone a little bit slower due to COVID, but we have completed that process. At this point, rates have been projected for all 23 cities and counties that initially signed up. Under that initial cost estimate, the base cost for the city of West Jordan would be about $75,833 with an additional cost for noticing. The noticing is done out of house, and the rate that we have been provided is $30,500 for a total of $106,500, which would be due to the group payment over the next 2 years. I mentioned that we've had two cities that have dropped out. As cities drop out of the program, costs for each remaining city will increase. So we saw two cities drop out, and the challenge at this point is that they accounted for almost 20% of the population and energy load that was a part of that initial estimate. So I believe that costs are likely to increase about 20% for the city to participate. We're now at the point where the interlocal agreement is being drawn up, and we do need to make a decision as to whether or not we want to sign on to participate with this fully, knowing that we now have at least a pretty good estimate of where the costs are going to be on this program, or if we want to at this point drop out of the program and let the remaining cities and towns move forward. At this time, I'm happy to answer any specific questions you have about the program, or just turn it over to you guys for discussion.
Okay, thank you, Tani, for that. Are we looking for an official motion or anything tonight? Are we looking for head nods? Are we looking for just a discussion?
No, what?
Do you want to answer, Alan?
Yeah, let me do that. So in talking with the legal staff, the next step, according to House Bill 411, is to draft an interlocal agreement. So if the council decides to opt out of this program, we're basically done. It was just a resolution, which was the first step. The second step is an interlocal agreement. So if the council wants to move forward, we would draft an interlocal agreement. The mayor would sign that, and then the next step would be an ordinance, which would need to go forward. So those would be the next steps. If the council chooses not to move forward with the program, my understanding at this time is nothing more needs to be done.
Okay, so we need to take a step forward if we want to move forward. Gotcha.
That's correct.
Okay, I believe I follow that. Looks like there's quite a few comments here. We'll start with Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Chair. Tani, did I hear that right? The municipalities responsible for 20% of the load have dropped out?
That is correct.
All right, thank you. I'm definitely very much concerned about air quality, but when I said, yeah, let's go for it, my hope was that we might be able to see the impact that this could have. If we've already lost a fifth, it just reinforces the need for something like this that really transcends borders to be tackled by the state rather than by the individual cities. Though I'm hoping that the cities, by saying, hey, we are interested, we are listening, I'm hoping that we sent a message to the state saying that this is something that we are concerned with. However, given the disproportionate burden of costs that would fall to the residents of West Jordan and the lower than anticipated potential benefit, I don't see a reason for us to participate further with that interlocal agreement. So those are my two thoughts.
Thank you, Councilmember Green.
Correct. And Ms. Barker, you can answer this question for me. We still don't, based on what they have done, we still don't have any idea which utilities have been approved for this program and what the cost of the utilities would be. Is that correct?
That's correct. They have not formalized which utilities would be used, although they're really headed down that path and have a pretty good idea. But I think the larger question is, how would this impact utility rates? And the best answer that I can provide you at this time is that it would likely increase residents' utility rates, participating residents' utility rates in the short term, though there is some thought that in the long term, it could significantly reduce rates. And so the kind of the reason I suppose that some might encourage the city to stay in would be for those long-term benefits that we may not otherwise see down the road. But you're correct. There's no dollar estimate that's been provided to this point as to what this would impact this would have on resident energy bills.
I'm going to echo the sentiment of Councilmember McConaughey and add a couple of other things. First off, the 105K that we're going to have to spend, that's 1% of our, that's 1% property tax revenue, because we get about 151, if I remember right, in property tax. And given where we have been with property taxes and knowing what we're looking at with a couple of bills out of the legislature, as you mentioned, the one in particular tonight, Senate, I think it's Senate Bill 18. I'm not willing to generously donate almost 1% of our property tax to this when we've got other pressing issues. The other thing is I'm not willing to continue. And if we decided to sign the interlocal agreement, we'd be voting for increasing utility rates in West Jordan, and we've taken enough hits over water rates and other things that I'm not willing to do that. I don't want to see the utility. And I know people can opt out of this, but it just seems that, and I think Councilmember McConaughey's right. If we're really serious about renewable energy, I'm not sure that the cities are the entities to be doing this. If we want a concerted effort, this is one that I just saw House Bill 411 when it was passed as kind of an interesting way that utilities could raise money for renewable energy, get the cities to say, yes, we're doing it. And then we pass the costs on to the taxpayers. And instead of the utilities being upfront and just saying, yeah, if we want to do renewable energy, this is what it's going to cost. It kind of puts us in the middle to raise the rates and say, yeah, we want to participate in this and pay money for it, when honestly, fair market system should be paying for, if renewable energy is competitive, then the fair market can take care of it. If it's not competitive, then why do we charge extra money to our citizens to make it competitive? So I don't think, I'm with Councilmember McConaughey. I don't want to see us proceed any further on this.
Thank you, Councilmember Green. Do we have any other comments? I do have a question for Tawny while I'm waiting for anybody else to raise their hand. And that is there another chance to opt out after this? Or are we on the hook if we go forward?
Thanks for that question, Chair. Yes, there are multiple opportunities for us to opt out of the program after this. However, we would be on the hook for that first payment, that $75,000 payment, if we move through this portion of the process. I would love to just add one other comment. I just kind of echoing some of the things I've heard. I remember when we went through this last year, one of the kind of council's refrains was, hey, we want to have a seat at the table, and we want to make sure that we're participating in things like this and making sure that our residents have every opportunity that they can to participate. And I do feel like that has occurred. Councilmember McConaughey, to that end, I'd love to share with you that the departing cities have reached out to us, have reached out to the mayor's office, and are interested in working on some renewable energy initiatives that would have a far less significant price tag should we decide not to move forward with this group. And I do think that meets that end goal that you guys were looking toward.
Thank you for that. Just out of curiosity, if Ogden and West Valley, I'm trying to do quick math in my head, equal 20%, what does West Jordan equal? And it's been a long time since I've been in math, but I have been helping my kids with their homework for the last about 20 years. So my guess is somewhere between 10 and 12%, something like that.
You're just about right on. It's kind of a mixture of residential use as well as business use. We have a high residential use and a little bit lower business use than say West Valley has, which is a city of a similar size. So our power load is slightly less than theirs because those businesses tend to use more power, and then Ogden's is significantly less than ours, fairly significantly.
Gotcha.
So you're about right on.
It was just some quick math in my head, and I was just going off of population. So awesome. Yeah, I think I can echo the statements of Councilmember McConaughey and Green and say that I don't feel a big impetus to move forward with this at this point, especially if they're reaching out, if those other two cities and maybe others would like to reach out and see what else we might be able to come up with. I agree. I would say that I would love to let the state handle this, but I think the fact that we're discussing House Bill 411 means the state took this approach to start with. So anyway, that's my thoughts on that. Councilman, or I did it again, Mr. Anderson.
Yeah, so I've kind of heard from three of you, but I think I would feel better, and I think you would feel better if we knew that there was a majority
Oh, absolutely.
of the council that
Absolutely. Is there,
made a
okay,
choice.
we have Councilmember Worthen and then Councilmember Whitelock, who both raised their hands. Councilmember Worthen.
I think if there's an alternative with these other cities to do something that's more cost effective, that's the way I'd want to go. So I pretty much would echo the same sentiments as both Councilman Green and McConaughey. So I'm not going to overtalk it. That's just basically where I'm at with it. So maybe we got to look at a different alternative that's not going to spend so much money of our citizens' tax dollars.
Thank you, Councilmember Whitelock.
So I voted no to begin with, and my feelings haven't changed. The geography of our area is part of the reason that we have an air pollution problem greater than many other areas. And Councilmember Green kind of alluded to this. If and when the time makes sense for us to be using more renewable energy, the market will just do that. And I would hate to burden our residents with higher utility costs for something that we don't really even know. And those other forms of energy are not without their own problems. They use things that are very toxic. They have things that have to be replaced. And those items that they use are not without health risks. So I'm a definite no still.
Thank you. And, I would probably be a vote to stay in if the future opt-out opportunities didn't cost us $75,000. So with that said, I think we have fairly clear direction. I am open to persuasion. Does anybody feel really strongly we should stay in? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands go up. So I think we have direction. Do you need a motion or anything, Tani or Alan? Are we good? No?
No, it is not up for a
Not up
vote.
for-
We just need,
Okay.
an official vote of official motion, because the next step would be continue to, if you all had said, the majority of you wanted to proceed forward, the next step that would come before you was an interlocal agreement. But since that isn't the desire, it's basically concluded, and I'll get with the attorneys and administration to just make sure we close any loose ends.
Like a bill on the board at 12:01 after the legislature ends.
So,
We just let it die. Councilmember Green.
Mr. Wall, we don't need to do a resolution to rescind the one that we opted in. We just say, no, we're not doing the interlocal agreement. We're okay.
That's what we're going to look at to see if there's any further action needed by the council.
But you have clear direction now. You know which way the council wants to go.
We'll take a look at it and we'll be back to you if there's an action that you do need to take.
Perfect. I like it. All right. That was the next to last item on the agenda. We now have remarks. Anything remarkable that anybody would like to say? Oh, come on. I know there's a few of you. Councilmember Worthen.
Yeah, I just want to do my shout outs like I always do. I have two this time. I want to give a shout out to Chamber West. During the legislative session, it's extremely busy for lots of people, of course, and putting in extra time. And Chamber West hosts, along with South Jordan Chamber and Southwest Valley Chamber, a legislative roundup on Saturday. Being a former chamber employee from years ago and helping with those, I know that takes a lot of time and energy to put into those. Chamber West also hosts 2 legislative affairs meetings on Mondays and Thursdays, and so they are watching what's going on at the Hill for us and the entire West Side. So I just want to give a shout out to them for all their extra work and their time. And then also our own Tawny Barker. She is doing just as much, if not more, but she's a one-man show on that one. Doesn't have the staff that the chamber does. Not that the chamber has a huge staff, they don't, but the point is I thank you, Tawny, for your time, your energy. I understand it's your job, but you're doing it exceptionally well, taking the time to listen to everything that's going on up at the Hill, paying attention to what's happening, updating the bill tracker, keeping us informed. It doesn't go unnoticed. So I wanted to give a shout out to both Chamber West and our own Tawny Barker just for her exceptional work that she's doing right now.
Thank you. Councilmember Whitelock.
So.
And then Councilmember Pack, by the way.
Part of what I was going to say is Western Growth does hold their legislative roundup on Saturday mornings. And if you're interested, please reach out and I can get you the Zoom login information. It's a great way to hear from those that represent our city and to interface with them. I'm wondering if we have to have a resolution for to support the traffic infrastructure resolution from Western Growth, or if we could just have a letter from our council of support that they could use. So if Chair Jacob and Mr. Anderson could look into that, it would be great, because the quicker we can get something done, the better, the more effective it is. As we all know, the session goes and it goes fast towards the end. And if we don't get it there soon, it may not be worth it. Thank you.
Thanks, Kayleen. Well, we have that topic on everybody's mind. Looking around, is there any thought? Looks like Mr. Wall has an opinion on this. Go ahead.
I was just going to offer, there's several things you could do to support it. You could move to have a letter presented, vote that you like it, and have a letter presented that could be signed by the chair or the entire council. We could draft a resolution for you to approve for next council meeting. A minimal approach would simply to be a verbal motion and then send an email to whomever. I would recommend that, depending on the strength of the message you want to send, that you either authorize a letter for you all to sign or pass a form of resolution. That way it's something that Tawny can have in hand, and it can be distributed to legislators. It can be read in a committee hearing or whatever.
I don't know. We've done letters in the past where we haven't had a formal vote on it. We just pass it around and everybody signs it, right? Basically. Is there any objection to that? Would anybody feel uncomfortable signing that letter? Just go ahead and unmute your mic and speak up if you have a problem. Otherwise, I like going that route just because it's quick and we don't have to wait till the next meeting.
I would like to sign that letter.
Okay. We got one in favor and none against. We got a lot of nods.
Plus the letter's going to be quicker than a formal resolution, not having to wait 2 weeks.
Right.
I'd be happy to sign something tomorrow.
Thank you.
You're muted.
I'd recommend, since it wasn't on the agenda to do so, that the leadership just work with Alan and I can help, or Tawny can help.
We'll do
to
it the informal.
draft a letter.
It's technically on the agenda because it's new business for next meeting.
Yeah, I suppose you could make a motion.
I'm just wondering
Yeah,
if
you could.
I'm just wondering if we made a motion so that in the letter then then it says that the council voted 7-0 to support this.
Well, I think if we have 7 signatures on the letter.
Well, that's true. If it's signed by 7 people, we're okay. So
Yeah,
you're right. If we all
and we
sign it, then we're okay.
Right. We could do it either way. We could draft it to say that we, the members of the council, whatever, ever, and then
Yeah.
you all sign it.
Yeah. Okay, great. That already took more time than I thought it would. Councilmember Pack and then Councilmember McConaughey.
Oh, thank you, Chairman. Thanks for organizing a great meeting. Thanks for all involved. Wanted to thank again Chris Pengra for reaching out. It's nice that he's striving to get our input with regard to the West Side amenities, attractions, zoning, different areas, and what we want to see going on through the city in terms of economic development. And I appreciated the invitation for the Big Bend field trip. I was able to see 9 deer and tons of birds right in the middle of West Jordan. That was interesting to see the situation there. And Macy's grand reopening is coming up. I'll be happy to attend that grand opening. It was mentioned in passing, the Good Landlord program by the Utah Apartment Association. I know when I had some rentals, I attended that, and the city defrayed the cost of having a rental in terms of licensing at that time. And if we are going to have ADUs and more rentals, that might be a good educational component to ensure that best practices are followed for the benefit of the city and residents as well. And I know that the chair and vice chair are, I appreciate the agenda tracker, and noting that we are somewhat backed up. I was wondering if it would be prudent to have a brief council discussion on which presentations are needed and wanted during city council meeting versus some that perhaps could be emailed to work on asynchronously and maybe put them on the website for public information. Just a thought if we're getting backed up, but sure appreciate collaborating with everyone, and thanks for a great meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Chair. 2 thoughts that I wanted to throw out there. I was having a hard time deciding whether or not I wanted to chime back in on that energy thing. I guess my frustration is there are some things that are larger than the city, and it would be really nice to see the state take the initiative there rather than, I mean, transportation is another one where the can got kicked, where it got kicked over to the city, saying, cities, if you guys approve this, we'll let you be the bad guys so we can take action on something that is desperately impacting you. Same thing here. It feels like this is being kicked over to us, but then the things that we should have jurisdiction over, like local land use, they're very quick to try and take that away. And I wasn't sure I wanted to point out my frustration with that or not. So, well, there you have it. The second thing I wanted to point out is I am really impressed with how Chair Jacob did with the meeting tonight. It is not easy to have all these different things up in front of you, a lot of different people going a lot of different directions, trying to keep an eye on who's presenting, who's speaking, who has questions, what's next on the agenda, what information needs to be brought up. There's a lot that's got to be juggled, and this was very well done. I was impressed. So yeah, well done. Carry on. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you. That's kind. You must have come into it with very low expectations because I feel like I fumbled a lot, but it will smooth out. And I appreciate everybody's indulgence and grace in letting me kind of feel this out a little bit as I figure out what I'm supposed to do sitting here. I think I've got a fairly good grasp of the idea. Now it's just a matter of executing. So we'll see how that goes. Yeah, and the other thing I wanted to, bring up that I alluded to earlier was inviting the public back into City Hall. As a remark, just while I have all 7 of us listening at once, and I don't intend for this to turn into a discussion, but I want to hear from you after this, maybe individually, shoot me a text or an email or call me. Maybe not tonight, but tomorrow or something. When the emergency authorization declaration thingy that we read at the beginning of the meeting expires on February 8th, we can continue noticing meetings, and this is just my thought and kind of what I'd like to do, is we can continue noticing meetings electronically as electronic meetings, so to speak, so that when so that anybody who does not feel comfortable coming to City Hall is totally free to participate the way that we're doing it right now. The only difference is that we have a technically anchor location. And I think all that means is somebody has to be here so that the public can be here. It doesn't have to be 4, it doesn't have to be 7, it can just be me for that matter. But I believe the 4 of us that are here kind of intend for that to be an ongoing thing, to keep coming here in the meantime. So the only thing that would change if we stopped issuing these monthly emergency declarations would be that the public can now come and participate in person. And I'm sure some will, and I'm sure some won't. And I'll totally keep open the option for public to participate the way they haven't been, the way that they are allowed to, but have not been taking great advantage of. And that is over the Zoom or the phone calls. Keeping in mind that we still have our council comment line, we still have the email, the council comment email. I just think it's time to encourage public participation. Other bodies are doing it. Other city councils are doing it. School boards doing it. I went to a town hall a couple Saturdays ago that some of our legislative representatives were putting on, and there were probably 50 people in the room. Now, it was a big room. It was probably about this size, and we were all fairly well spread out. But you know, public, come, wear your mask, but come. And if unless I hear a lot of strong objections and some really good points as to why we can't allow the public to come, I would like to go ahead and proceed that way and just not sign that declaration for February and just see how it goes. And we'll take it one step at a time, one meeting at a time, and see who and if anybody shows up. Anyway, that's my 2 cents. If you want to chime in on that, just get a hold of me. Councilmember Lamb has.
I just wanted to agree with you. We have not had in-person contact with citizens for 11 months now. This is our 11th month without it. And you hit the nail on the head. School boards are doing it. Other cities are doing it. I think it's time to open up our council chambers. I don't think we're going to have 3 million people coming, but allow those that want to come and ask that they social distance and wear a mask, and we'll wear a mask too, just like I'm doing right now. So I just want to say thank you for saying that, and I would appreciate if we can start looking at that and moving forward. And like you said, let's try it out. If we have an issue, then we'll shut it down again. But
yeah,
I think it's time.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I'll wear my mask like this because this is how I see people wearing it in Costco. So that must be the right way. That's why we bought it. Any further remarks? Oh, Councilmember Pack has his hand up. Councilmember Pack, please.
Oh, thank you, Chair Jacob. Yes, I think the more variety of options we have for people to participate, then they can do what feels comfortable for them without feeling pressured one way or the other. Same with city staff who are presenting, with council members, with public. We have phone line, we have internet, we have in person. So I think that the more opportunity we give to meet people in the manner that they want to be met, hopefully we get more interaction. So I'd be fine with having the anchor location, provided there's no pressure on anyone's part to do anything other than what they are comfortable doing, whether city staff, council members, or residents, so that they have internet, phone, and in-person options available to them. Thank you.
Thank you. And obviously in person would require that we have a sergeant at arms coming for future meetings as well, just to make sure we're all safe and stuff. Okay, if there's no further comments. Oh, we have a crystal ball. See, I was about to adjourn. This is the crystal ball. This is snippets from our agenda tracker spreadsheet, and give you a little what's the word I'm looking for? Preview. A preview. Gosh, sometimes I start thinking in foreign languages and I just cannot translate it. A preview of what is coming next. And in the next meeting, we have, a workshop on economic development and a brief discussion on helipads, which will be interesting. And Denise is going to give us our first budget preview. And we'll talk about new business again. And we've got that kid annexation that that's Kearns Improvement in District, and we're not adopting children. A report from the Treasury. Anyway, you can see what's there, what's coming up. And again, as has been stated by our previous chair very eloquently and accurately, this is a moving document. We discuss this every week as leadership and staff. So we will be probably making changes to this as well. But here's a sneak preview. And if you need help or you want to access this offline, let me or Alan or IT know, and we can make sure you get it. Or just shoot one of us an email and we'll send it to you as an attachment. That's fine too. And then here's your upcoming meetings. February 10th is our next council meeting. Those are just all the regular council meetings. And with that, remind you that if you did not get a chance to participate in citizen comments tonight, you still have a way to comment and get a hold of us. And I encourage and welcome you to do so. Like I said, I am new at this, and if I didn't give enough time for participants to chime in and raise their hand or whatever via the Zoom, here's how you can still get a hold of us. And if you want to talk for more than 3 minutes, you can leave a voicemail that takes all day. No, I'm just kidding. Don't do that. There's a comment line there. It goes straight to an answering machine, but all 7 of the council gets it, as well as the council staff has access to that voicemail. And then also the email address, as you see there, councilcomments@westjordan.utah.gov. And yes, please include your name. Now, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Councilmember Green moves to adjourn. Councilmember McConaughey has seconded that. That is a non-debatable motion. All in favor, say aye.
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 We are adjourned until the next meeting.
Thank you, everyone.